Chapter 856. Competing in flying speed wasn't like competing in anything else. For those who were evenly matched, even the slightest bit of burden could be the key to victory or defeat. However, Yun Peng could already see that Wei Chuanqiu, who had been evenly matched with him in terms of speed, was now at a disadvantage. He was no match for him at all. Even if he had more people on him, Wei Chuanqiu's chances of winning were very slim. Both of them were descendants of primordial fierce beasts and immortal beasts that had reached the early stage of immortal emperor but didn't become humans' mounts. Moreover, both of them specialized in speed, which was rare in the entire immortal world. Even though the two of them had always been competing with each other, they secretly appreciated each other and shared the same fate. They had disregarded their own safety many times to help each other in times of danger. 10,000 years ago, Wei Chuanqiu's sudden disappearance made Yun Peng search almost the entire immortal world. After searching for 100 years, he still couldn't find Wei Chuanqiu's shadow. In the end, he suspected that Wei Chuanqiu was in danger. After all, it was very normal to fight and kill in the immortal world. Unexpectedly, while he was meditating on the dangerous peak of Baiyun Mountain, he suddenly saw a giant bat carrying a person. Who else could it be but Wei Chuanqiu? At first he thought he was seeing things until he saw that the bat intentionally went around Baiyun Mountain. Yun Peng immediately confirmed that this giant bat was Wei Chuanqiu, who had mysteriously disappeared for 10,000 years. He immediately chased after it and found that it was indeed this guy. Thus, the two of them who had been separated for many years didn't say anything when they met. Why wouldn't I dare? Yun Peng stared at Wei Chuanqiu and said indifferently, "I'm just afraid that you won't admit it after you lose. At that time, you will come up with all sorts of excuses to not admit defeat." "Don't talk nonsense here. When have I ever lied?" Wei Chuanqiu's eyes lit up as he looked straight ahead and said in a cadence, "The final destination is Hallucination Immortal City. The first to arrive wins and the second to arrive willingly admit defeat. Is that okay?" When Yu Qianqiu heard this, he immediately became spirited. He excitedly rubbed his hands together and said, "I think it's fine. In any case, I'm also participating. Let me be a witness." His gaze swept over the two of them, inwardly wondering who would be more comfortable to sit on. Yun Peng glanced at Yu Qianqiu and said to Wei Chuanqiu, "Sure. But let me say the ugly words first. If anyone dares to play tricks along the way, don't blame me for being merciless." The meaning behind his words was clear. He suspected that Yu Qianqiu would help Wei Chuanqiu create trouble. Yu Qianqiu looked at Wei Chuanqiu speechlessly. He coldly snorted and transmitted his voice to Wei Chuanqiu. "Bat King Wei, it seems like your character isn't that good. You have dragged me into this mess and made me a villain in others' eyes." Wei Chuanqiu flew into a rage and roared at Yun Peng. "Yun Peng, listen up. If this brat dares to cause trouble in the middle of the journey, you don't have to do anything. I'll kill him first." "What does it have to do with me?" Yu Qianqiu's expression stiffened. After a long while he managed to spit out the word F***ck. He, an outsider, had become the victim. Yun Peng coldly snorted and flew shoulder to shoulder with Wei Chuanqiu. His body suddenly emitted a blinding white light, startling Yu Qianqiu. A huge bird with a wingspan of more than 10 meters, twice the size of Wei Chuanqiu's original form, appeared in the sky. Its pure white feathers were like white jade, sparkling and translucent, emitting a hazy white light. There was not a single blemish on its body, making it look somewhat unreal. Its sharp eyes were deep and threatening. Its beak was curved like a golden hook, and its huge and sharp claws were also golden. Its body was protected by an arc-shaped light barrier that looked like a white nebula. Its jade-like wings soared into the sky, giving off an extraordinary aura. This was a pure descendant of the desolate era, the great golden rock with jade wings. Yu Qianqiu's eyes were filled with endless amazement. It was truly too beautiful. Wei Chuanqiu, on the other hand, was not surprised at all. He quickly moved toward the cloud rock and suddenly flipped himself above the cloud rock. His body emitted a powerful force. As he flipped himself in the air, he directly pushed Yu Qianqiu away. F***ck. Stinky bat, what are you trying to do? Before he could react, Yu Qianqiu let loose a torrent of curses. The flying speed of these two cultivators was truly frightening. It was truly frightening to be thrown from such a high altitude. When he stabilized himself, Yu Qianqiu discovered that he had already landed on Yun Peng's back. He was safe and sound. He immediately understood what was going on and shut his mouth. Yun Peng looked back and his eyes flashed with astonishment. He was now beginning to suspect Yu Qianqiu's identity. How could a soul formation cultivator dare to curse Wei Qianqiu, an immortal emperor cultivator? Wasn't this worthy of suspicion? Wei Qianqiu shifted his position and flew shoulder to shoulder with Yun Peng. The two of them glanced at each other and sped up at the same time. Two rays of light, one green and one white, shot into the sky like shooting stars, becoming the two most dazzling spots in the sky. On a flying shuttle, three middle-aged men stood in a triangle at the front, followed by two elders and a young man and a young woman. All of them wore the same dark green uniform. The seven of them were all Hidden Dragon Mountain Manor immortal cultivators. The two elders in the middle were Hidden Dragon Mountain Manor elders. One was called Duke Long Yu and the other was called Guang Juanru. The 6 men and 1 woman stared dumbfoundedly at the 2 streaks of light flying away. They had clearly seen the changes that had occurred in the sky just now. In particular, Yu Qianqiu's cursing fit the situation very well. After a long time, the man driving the flying shuttle at the front said, "So fast." He thought that his flying shuttle was fast enough, but compared to the other party's flying speed, it was simply incomparable. He was simply too far behind to catch up. Green Wing Bat King Wei Qianqiu. White Cloud Mountain Lord Yun Ping. Duke Long Yu and Guang Juanru looked at each other and called out a name. Hearing these 2 names, a commotion broke out on the flying shuttle. These 2 were famous figures in the immortal world. The others had only heard of them but never met them. Duke Long Yu was startled. These 2 experts haven't appeared together in the immortal world for a long time. I didn't expect to see them together again today. Guang Juanru shook his head and sighed. Wasn't there a rumor that Green Wing Bat King Wei Qianqiu is dead? Why did he appear again after 10,000 years? Rumors can be real or fake. Now that we've seen Green Wing Bat King, rumors are just rumors, we can't take them seriously. Duke Long Yu sighed and looked far into the sky. Looking at the direction they're going, could they be heading to the hallucinatory immortal city like us? That's not for sure. They rarely appear. I'm afraid they won't go to that crowded place. Guang Juanru pondered. The young man behind him glanced at the beautiful lady with a slender waist and voluptuous breasts. Seeing her bright eyes and confused face, he asked, "Grandpa, who is that young man who landed on White Cloud Mountain Lord? I heard that Green Wing Bat King and White Cloud Mountain Lord hate immortal beasts being other people's mounts. Why would they ride on this person?" The young man was Guang Juanru's grandson, Guang Yanzu. The beautiful lady beside him was Duke Long Yu's granddaughter, Long Xiaojiu. The former seemed to know the latter very well. Duke Long Yu nodded and said, "I think it's strange too. Unfortunately, I was too focused on Wei Qianqiu and Yun Peng. I didn't see the young man's face clearly. I wonder what kind of expert he is to make these 2 experts ride on him willingly. Does Junior Marshal Brother Guang know this person?" He noticed that Guang Juanru was frowning in thought, so he asked. "I didn't pay much attention to him, but he does look familiar." Guang Juanru stroked his beard and pondered. Suddenly he raised his head and said in shock, "It's him? How is this possible?" Everyone on the flying shuttle stared at him. Duke Long Yu smiled faintly and said, "Junior Marshal Brother Guang, don't keep us guessing. Who is this person?" Guang Juanru smiled and shook his head. "I saw him when I led the team to the God Ruin Realm meeting. This person is the most famous young man after the God Ruin Realm meeting. But everyone says he's a demigod wandering cultivator. Why is he riding on Wei Qianqiu and Yun Peng's back? This is simply unimaginable." When everyone heard this, they looked at each other in disbelief. Duke Long Yu frowned and said, "Could this person be the Yu Qianqiu who single-handedly killed 30 disciples of Heartless Palace in the Divine Ruin Realm? If I'm not wrong, it should be him." Guang Juanru smiled bitterly. Everyone said that he has offended Heartless Palace and they will definitely not let him go. But who would have thought that he has the support of Green Wing Bat King and White Cloud Mountain Lord? I'm afraid that even if Heartless Palace wants to touch him, they will have to think twice. If these 2 old monsters join hands, if those old fellows from Heartless Palace don't come out, they probably won't be able to do anything to Yu Qianqiu. After all, these 2 old monsters are not to be trifled with. Long Xiaojiu, who had been depressed all this while, suddenly bit her lips. Hatred flashed across her eyes as she asked, "This Yu Qianqiu should be that Wan Ling's lover, right? I heard that Wan Ling shamelessly flirted with that Yu Qianqiu in front of everyone. Grandpa Guang, you were at the scene, you should have seen it too, right? The flying shuttle instantly became silent. Everyone was secretly sizing each other up. Ancestor Guang Yinzu looked at Long Xiaojie with a complicated expression. Everyone present knew that Long Xiaojie and Wan Ling were archenemies. Long Xiaojie was originally in love with a handsome young man, and both parties were already discussing marriage. Who knew that Wan Ling would suddenly come out and interfere, and actually bewitch the man who was about to become Long Xiaojie's husband away? The most infuriating thing was that after Wan Ling coaxed that man to break up with Long Xiaojie, she also kicked that man away. In the end, that man found Long Xiaojie to repent and beg her to forgive him. Long Xiaojie, who suffered great humiliation, killed that man in a fit of anger, which caused quite a bit of trouble. Fortunately, Hidden Dragon Mountain Manor was strong enough, and this matter was finally settled. But Long Xiaojie and Wan Ling were at loggerheads, almost regardless of the occasion. As long as they met, they would make a big fuss, but Long Xiaojie always suffered losses in Wan Ling's hands. Chapter 857. In short, Long Xiaojie was always at a disadvantage in every aspect of the battle. Even in terms of their respective backgrounds, Long Xiaojie was slightly inferior. Putting aside whether Wan Gu Tong or Hidden Dragon Manor was more powerful, the important thing was that Wan Ling's grandfather was Wan Gu Tong's sect master, while Long Xiaojie's grandfather was only an elder of Hidden Dragon Manor. On this point, Long Xiaojie was at a huge disadvantage. There were some things Wan Ling dared to say and do because Wan Boxing could handle it. But when it came to Long Xiaojie, she would have many scruples. After all, her grandfather could not be the master of Hidden Dragon Manor. Duke Long Yu furrowed his brows, sighed slightly and said, "Little Zhou Heir, let bygones be bygones. There's no need to hold a grudge against a man who isn't worth it. Otherwise you'll be the one who gets hurt in the end." He then gave Guang Juanru a meaningful glance, and the latter immediately gave Guang Yinzu a meaningful glance as well. Long Xiaojie had been depressed ever since she experienced that setback in her relationship, and Guang Yinzu had been her firm pursuer for a long time. Thus, the elders of both sides had the intention of matchmaking. This trip to hallucinatory Immortal City, the two elders said that they were going to do something, but in reality, it was to create an opportunity for the two of them. In reality, if this was in the past, Guang Juanru would not have been willing, even though he was Duke Long Yu's junior brother. The main reason he was unwilling was because Long Xiaojie's setback in her relationship became the biggest joke in the immortal world. Just as she was about to marry, her man was snatched away by another woman. To put it bluntly, her reputation was not too good. Guang Juanru naturally did not want his grandson's reputation to be affected. However, the world was full of setbacks. Guang Juanru led a team to participate in the God Ruins Realm gathering, but the entire team was annihilated. Originally, all the sects were in similar situations, so it was not a loss of face for Hidden Dragon Manor. However, the key was that his background in the sect was not deep, because the direct descendants of Hidden Dragon Manor all had the surname Long, and he was an external elder. Thus, there were people who wanted to use this matter to mess with him. At this time, Long Yu was worried about Long Xiaojie's marriage. Although he knew that his granddaughter was still pure, there were all kinds of rumors going around. His granddaughter had actually become a used shoe, causing all the young geniuses who were interested to avoid Long Xiaojie like a snake or a scorpion. There were great talents who wanted to play around, but if he really wanted to marry her, everyone would think that it was a joke and they would all tactfully refuse. Duke Long Yu was enraged. He naturally couldn't let his granddaughter become someone else's plaything. Coincidentally, his junior martial brother was asking for help at this time. He immediately remembered that his junior martial brother's grandson was a firm pursuer of his granddaughter. In the past, he couldn't ask his junior martial brother for help, but now. Therefore, Duke Long Yu hinted vaguely to see if they could get married. At this point, Guang Juanru couldn't refuse anymore. He knew that if something happened to him, his grandson's future would be bleak. Sometimes, reputation was not as important as one's life. Thus, no matter how he felt, he still agreed happily on the surface. He was straightforward, but Duke Long Yu was even more straightforward. He immediately used all the connections he could and successfully helped his junior brother overcome this obstacle. This was why the two old guys took the lead and match-made the two youngsters. This was really a painstaking effort. After Guang Yinzu received his grandfather's hint, he immediately smiled at Long Xiaojie. "Xiaojie, why bother with a woman like that? Who doesn't know that she used Wan Boxing to run amok in the immortal world? Don't worry. Someone will take care of her sooner or later. Long Xiaoju looked at him indifferently as if she was looking at a stranger. She unintentionally glanced at her grandfather who was frowning and looking at her. She immediately squeezed out a smile and replied to Guang Yanzu, "N." Guang Yanzu's joy was written all over his face. He pointed at the beautiful scenery of the mountains and rivers below and chattered endlessly. Long Xiaojiu cooperated with him with a forced smile and nodded continuously. She was a man of few words and refused to give a complete sentence to Guang Yanzu. Guang Yanzu didn't mind. Although his grandfather Guang Juanru also had a smile on his face, it was a little unnatural. Some were happy and some were sad. At this moment Yu Qianchou had forgotten all his worries. He sat cross-legged on the back of the cloud rock with a smug smile on his face. His shoulders trembled as he laughed. From time to time he waved his hand and shouted at Wei Chuanqiu who was chasing after him, "Bat King Wei. Faster faster, we'll catch up soon. Hee." One in front and one behind, one green and one white, two streams of light cut through the sky. The surrounding clouds disappeared in an instant. It had to be said that carrying a person was indeed a burden in a competition of pure speed. However, Wei Chuanqiu was still clearly at a disadvantage. From the beginning they were flying shoulder to shoulder. Now they were half a body lower. Now there was a distance of nearly 100 meters between them. However, Big Bat's eyes had turned red. Clearly he was very competitive and his eyes were bloodshot. No one knew when it started, but there were more and more streams of light coming and going in the surroundings. All the immortal cultivators that were tearing through the sky were shocked by this world-shocking speed, and all of them stopped in midair as they watched the azure and white streaks of light chase after each other. From time to time, the exclamations of White Cloud Mountain Master and Green-Winged Bat King resounded in the air. What attracted everyone's attention the most was still Yu Qianchou, who was sitting on the back of the cloud rock, baring his fangs and brandishing his claws at Wei Chuanqiu. After all, the celestial realm was so big. There weren't many people who could recognize him, Yu Qianchou. The frequency at which the flowing lights of various colors appeared became more and more frequent. Yun Peng, who had been flying quickly in front of him, was shocked when he came into contact with the surprised and shocked gazes. Only then did he realize that he, the master of White Cloud Mountain, had become someone else's mount. If no one saw it, it wouldn't matter. But what was worse was that so many people saw it. That heart of the cloud rock. It instantly became cold. He who had always been arrogant, for the first time his eyes became evasive and unconfident. He didn't dare to look at everyone's shocked eyes. Due to his absent-mindedness, his speed started to slow down. From the increasing number of people appearing in the surroundings, he could determine that they weren't far from illusionary Immortal City. The closer they got to illusionary Immortal City, the more people would appear. Bat King Wei. Quick quick quick, we're close. Yu Qianchou excitedly waved his arms. He didn't expect Wei Chuanqiu's potential to be so great. He was actually catching up faster and faster. In reality, this was just his misperception. He was sitting on the cloud rock and the cloud rock's speed was gradually slowing down. He just couldn't feel it. But to a pursuer like Wei Chuanqiu, he could clearly feel it. Wei Chuanqiu looked around and was instantly overjoyed. Wei Chuanqiu was very clear about the cloud rock's character. The cloud rock was arrogant and treasured its feathers. How could it be someone else's mount? From the moment Yu Qianchou landed on his back, Wei Chuanqiu knew that the cloud rock was definitely going to lose. Now that he saw it, it was just as he expected. He had fallen for his trap. The gap between the two was getting smaller. 50 meters, 30 meters, 10 meters. Yu Qianchou jumped up excitedly. He waved his arms and shouted, "Bat King Wei is catching up. Quick." "All right." Wei Chuanqiu shouted. The two finally returned to a situation where they were flying side by side. After a short stalemate, Wei Chuanqiu's figure slowly moved forward. He laughed sinisterly and gradually shook off the cloud rock. In the end, the cloud rock was the one chasing him. At this moment, the cloud rock didn't seem to see this scene. His sharp and spirited eyes were somewhat slack as he flew numbly. His arrogant heart was ruthlessly trampled on. He didn't know what was going on. Why did he agree to let Yu Qianchou ride on his back? But it also felt like he was the one who wanted to compete with Wei Chuanqiu. Actually, the reason was very simple. It was because he saw an old friend that he hadn't seen for 10,000 years. He didn't expect that Wei Chuanqiu was still alive, so he was too excited. However, he was also a person with a cold face but a warm heart. He was used to using actions to express himself. In his heart, continuing the competition from 10,000 years ago was the best greeting gift. Wei Chuanqiu's sinister laughter as he brushed past caused the excited Yu Qianqiu to be slightly startled. He sensed that something was wrong. Furthermore, he finally sensed that Yun Peng's speed was gradually slowing down. Looking at the surprised gazes from all around him, he seemed to have guessed something. Damn it! Don't vent your anger on me when you lose. Yu Qianqiu coughed and sat down cross-legged. He no longer cheered for Wei Chuanqiu. Instead, he heavily patted Yun Peng and said, Senior Yun, Bat King Wei has already overtaken you when you weren't paying attention. Yun Peng suddenly woke up from his daze. Hearing the sinister laughter that came from 100 meters away, he immediately understood everything. He immediately shouted angrily, Wei Chuanqiu, you dare to scheme against me. Bullsh**. If you want to act shamelessly, then say it clearly. If you bet, then you have to accept your loss. Don't play this game. Wei Chuanqiu's voice came from the front. Yun Peng's eyes suddenly burst with a bright light. Without saying anything, his flying speed exploded. He chased after the stars and the moon as he bit towards Wei Chuanqiu. He had already thought it through. Since he had already lost face, he could not let Wei Chuanqiu's scheme succeed. The distance between the two sides immediately began to slowly close. Wei Chuanqiu immediately felt the pressure. In his heart, he cursed Yu Qianqiu for blindly interfering. If he let Yun Peng become stupid for a while longer, then he would definitely win. The two of them instantly went all out. Their flashing speed caused a burst of exclamations in the air. In Chu Tian's eyes, a vast and boundless sea of clouds appeared. There were countless streaks of light rising and falling in the clouds. Because of this, the two of them became even more fierce. Yun Peng was slowly catching up with an unbelievable speed, but in the end he was still a bit late. In an instant, the two of them rushed into the sky above the vast sea of clouds. The streaks of light scattered to the sides in shock. Wei Chuanqiu, who was leading by nearly 10 meters, suddenly changed his direction. He directly turned and soared into the sky. In the air, he exploded into a cloud of green mist. Yun Peng followed closely behind. In a flash of white light, he also appeared. Yu Qianqiu, who had been thrown far away by the inertia, quickly flew towards the two of them. Chapter 858. Above the vast sea of clouds, all kinds of flowing lights appeared and hovered in the air to observe. Green-winged Bat King and White Cloud Mountain Lord. These two titles were constantly being whispered. The two people everyone was talking about were hovering in the air, facing each other. Yun Peng's expression was originally gloomy, but when he heard people talking about when he became that brat's mount, he immediately shouted angrily, Wei Chuanqiu, why do you want to harm me? As expected, he exploded. Yu Qianqiu secretly clicked his tongue and quietly retreated a little to avoid being implicated. Wei Chuanqiu asked with a face full of suspicion, Yun Peng, is there something wrong with your brain? Why don't you tell me when I have harmed you? Yun Peng choked. He couldn't say that he had become someone else's mount. Seeing this, Wei Chuanqiu coldly snorted and said, If you lose, then admit defeat honestly. Don't find all kinds of excuses. If you refuse to admit defeat, I can't do anything to you. Say it yourself. Do you admit defeat or not? Yun Peng's eyes were like cold lightning, staring straight at Wei Chuanqiu. Wei Chuanqiu couldn't help but feel guilty. He immediately waved his hand and said, If you don't admit defeat, then forget it. I won't force you, just pretend that nothing happened. Then he shouted to Yu Qianqiu, Let's go. He turned into a flowing light and flew towards the mountains of clouds and the sea of fog below. Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything. He looked at Yun Peng and acted as if he didn't know anything. He chased after Wei Chuanqiu. The two of them passed through the misty clouds one after another, and the view before them suddenly became clear. Below the clouds, there were many strange mountains like stars in a chessboard. On top of every mountain, there were houses of different styles. Some were tall buildings, some were courtyards, some were green tiles and red walls, and some were resplendent in gold and jade. In the middle of the mountains there was a huge square crowded with people. It was very lively. It was very similar to what Yu Qianqiu saw in the 100 Flowers Valley. It was filled with stalls of small merchants and peddlers. The perimeter of the square began to spread out with many winding main roads, leading in all directions. The winding main roads branched out into many branches, leading to every mountain. Seen from the air, the main and branch roads that wound between the mountains looked like thick and thin gray ribbons. intertwining and intertwining like a labyrinth, dazzling the eyes. There was an endless stream of people on the grayish-white ribbon, and there were people flying across the sky from time to time. It was very lively. The two of them stopped in the air below the clouds and looked down with different expressions. Wei Chuanqiu sighed with emotion. After 10,000 years he saw the prosperity of the illusory immortal city again. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu looked around at the various buildings on top of the mountain and asked blankly, could this be the hallucinatory immortal city? He felt that it was different from what he had imagined, and he couldn't tell what was hallucinatory about it. Where else could it be if not the illusory immortal city? Wei Chuanqiu was startled as she spoke. She turned around and sized him up suspiciously. Could it be that you've never been to the illusory immortal city before? Yu Qianqiu replied casually, what's so strange about that? I've always been concentrating on cultivating and haven't come out to gain experience. It's very normal that I haven't been to the illusory immortal city before. You're so cunning and despicable before coming out to gain experience. What would you be like if you came out to gain experience? Wei Chuanqiu had a face of disbelief. She noticed that she couldn't tell if Yu Qianqiu was speaking the truth or not from his face. Her small eyes were filled with puzzlement as she asked, what exactly do you want to do here? Could it be that you want to buy or sell something? Oh. Yu Qianqiu turned his head to look at the mountains below. He frowned and said, Bat King Wei, where is the Merchant Alliance? Wei Chuanqiu pointed at the tallest mountain below and pointed at the magnificent buildings on the mountain. That's the Merchant Alliance, why are you looking for it? Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up slightly. He rubbed his hands and said, nothing much, just registering a Merchant Alliance. Wei Chuanqiu's expression froze. He sized up Yu Qianqiu in disbelief. You're not joking, are you? Or did I hear wrongly? You want to register a Merchant Alliance? Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and asked, is there a problem? Wei Chuanqiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You're just a soul formation stage itinerant cultivator, registering a Merchant Alliance? Let's not talk about the large amount of spirit stones needed to register. A Merchant Alliance isn't something that one person can play with. Be careful that you'll be eaten up by others. I want to know what you do for a living. If someone wants to eat me up, you go and beat them up. Yu Qianqiu threw down a sentence disapprovingly, then directly flew towards the grandest building. Wei Chuanqiu was stunned on the spot. He was speechless for a long time. What's your relationship with this kid? A question suddenly came from behind. Wei Chuanqiu turned around to look at Yun Peng. Actually, he didn't need to turn around to know it was Yun Peng. He smiled bitterly. It's a long story, I'm just unlucky. You should go back to your Baiyun mountain. This kid looks like a troublemaker no matter how I look at him, don't get involved. Yun Peng paused, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. He then said expressionlessly, do you think I'm like you, always slacking off? I'm willing to admit defeat, I will abide by the bet from back then. You. Wei Chuanqiu suddenly turned around, waved his sleeves and sighed. Why do you have to do this? You and I both know that was just a joke back then. You and I were competitive, it can't be taken seriously. It's just 10 years, it's no big deal. Yun Peng said indifferently. Back then, the two of them were proud of their speed. Because of a disagreement, they made a bet, both of them competing in speed. The bet was that the loser would run for 10 years for the winner. At that time, they competed many times, but they were evenly matched, no one could win. Now that Wei Chuanqiu had slacked off and won, whether the bet was valid or not depended on both of them. The two of them floated in the air, extremely conspicuous. Wei Chuanqiu looked wretched, his body was thin, and his sleeves were strangely big, while Yun Peng's aura was extraordinary. The two of them, one green and one white, formed a clear contrast. The passers-by would size up the two of them from time to time. Those who knew them were in awe. Those who didn't seem to be watching a joke. After a moment of silence, Yun Peng stared at the mountain peak where Yu Qianqiu flew to and said lightly, your little friend seems to be in some trouble. Before he finished speaking, Wei Chuanqiu had already flashed over, followed by Yun Peng. Yu Qianqiu, who was blocked outside the main hall, looked at the two golden-robed men at the door, feeling depressed. The reason why they didn't let him in was because the guards told him that this place was the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, and only the Chamber of Commerce Alliance matters were handled. Other unrelated people were not allowed to trespass. Yu Qianqiu nodded and bowed, telling them that he was here to register a Chamber of Commerce. But they told him that registering a Chamber of Commerce required a referral from another Chamber of Commerce. Otherwise he would not be allowed in. Yu Qianzhou had never heard of this rule and thought that the two guards were purposely making things difficult for him, but in the end he was very understanding and took out 2 storage bags with a smile, and secretly stuffed them into the hands of the two, so that they could make things convenient for him. The 2 guards were dumbfounded. It was the first time they had seen such an open bribe. It was no different from harming them. If they were found out, they would be in trouble. The 2 of them were furious as if they had caught a hot potato. They could not wait to throw away the storage bags that Yu Qianzhou stuffed into them, and gave a serious warning. Is it too little? Mother Astersker. Even a guard's appetite is so big. Yu Qianzhou looked gloomy as he turned around to pick up the 2 storage bags. Coincidentally, Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng landed in front of him. Wei Chuanqiu's gaze swept over the 2 guards, asking suspiciously, "What did you stuff into them?" Yu Qianzhou lowered his voice and mocked, "Their appetite is too big. There are 10 divine grade spirit stones in each storage bag. It seems they think it's too little, not letting me register." Bribing in public? Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng's faces twitched. The former asked with difficulty, "Why did you give them spirit stones? Don't tell me you want to barge in without a referral from another chamber of commerce." Yu Qianzhou blanked for a moment. "Do I really need a referral from another chamber of commerce to register? This is the rule of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, mainly to prevent people with unknown origins from causing trouble, don't you know?" Wei Chuanqiu weakly raised his hand to his forehead. The sharp light in Yun Peng's eyes receded, his eyelids drooping slightly as he maintained his silence. Yu Qianzhou turned around to look at the open doors, muttering under his breath, "Damn it. There's such a lousy rule. Why haven't I heard of it before? Who should I look for a referral?" Pondering for a moment, his eyes lit up, asking, "Bat King Wei Wan Gutong should have a business here, right? Do you know where it is?" Wei Chuanqiu frowned, asking suspiciously, "The Immortal World's #1 Chamber of Commerce, Wan Gutong? Are you familiar with Wan Gutong? For a referral like this, if one doesn't have a good understanding of the other party's background, one wouldn't help. It might even be risky. Without old man Wan Bo's approval, no one would dare to help Wan Gutong. Are you sure Wan Gutong is useful?" "I'll give it a try." Yu Qianzhou looked around, asking, "Which mountain is Wan Gutong on?" At this time Yun Peng, who had been silent all this time, suddenly pointed to a mountain not far away. "Over there." Yu Qianzhou took the opportunity to look at the gray buildings on the opposite side of the mountain. Nodding his head, he put away the 2 storage bags in his hands and flew off in a flicker. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng exchanged a glance, then followed after Yu Qianzhou. Both of them were curious whether Yu Qianzhou was really that capable, choosing the #1 sect in the immortal world, Wan Gutong, out of all people. The 3 of them landed in front of the gray hall on the opposite side. This place was obviously livelier than the Commerce Alliance's area, with people walking in and out of the hall. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng followed behind Yu Qianzhou. More importantly, the 2 of them standing together was too eye-catching, immediately attracting the attention of many people. Elder Wan Gi, who was sitting behind the curtains in the side hall, stood up and walked out in large strides. From afar he cupped his fists towards Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng. "So it's the green-winged Bat King and White Cloud Mountain Chieftain. Sorry for the disrespect." These 2 people's names did have some influence in the immortal world. Everyone in the hall stopped to look at them. Wei Chuanqiu chuckled, "So it's Gi Ah. Are you in charge of this place now?" Both sides were obviously familiar with each other. "I'm ashamed. I'm indebted to the sect master's kindness." Wan Gi said a few polite words. His gaze fell on Yu Qianzhou, who was flanking Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng. He cupped his fists in a somewhat surprised manner and said, "Honored sir, looks very unfamiliar. May I know who you are?" Chapter 859. He clearly misunderstood. Not being able to see through Yu Qianzhou's cultivation was one reason, but the most important reason was that Yu Qianzhou had Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng following behind him. These 2 followers were more powerful and ordinary people couldn't afford to use them. "I'm no expert." Yu Qianzhou smiled self-deprecatingly and cupped his hands. "I'm Yu Qianzhou." Yu Qianzhou. Wan Gi was startled. He felt that the name sounded familiar, so he asked tentatively, "You're the Yu Qianzhou who participated in the gathering of the God Ruin Realm?" Yu Qianzhou was also startled by him. He calmed himself down and said, "I did participate in the gathering of the God Ruin Realm. Is there a problem?" He thought that Wan Ling and the others wouldn't spread the news that he was an immortal emperor's secret agent everywhere. He's Yu Qianchou. So it's him. Whispers immediately came from the hall and everyone's eyes were focused on Yu Qianchou. Yu Qianchou looked around blankly as if he didn't think that he had already become so famous. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng looked at each other speechlessly. They didn't know where Yu Qianchou came from. How could so many people know him? This didn't match the identity of a spirit-severing rogue cultivator. The two of them didn't know that the people in the hall were even more confused about them. Why would early immortal Emperor Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng hang out with a mere spirit-severing rogue cultivator? After confirming that the person in front of him was indeed Yu Qianchou, Wang Ge immediately looked at him in a new light. He didn't know what was going on between Yu Qianchou and Wan Gutong, but he heard about Wan Ling holding Yu Qianchou's hand in public. Wan Ling was deeply doted on by Wan Bushing. Wang Ge had to give face to Wan Ling's lover. He immediately cupped his hands towards the three of them and said, "It's rare for three esteemed guests to come, please come in." The three of them didn't stand on ceremony and followed him to the room on the left of the hall. After sitting down, Wang Ge asked with a smile, "I don't want to make a deal, I just have a request. I want to register a merchant association with the alliance, but I need to be recommended by another merchant association. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble your merchant association to be my referral. I want to register a Chamber of Commerce in the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, but I need a referral from another Chamber of Commerce. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble your Chamber of Commerce to be my referral." The smile on Wang Ge's face froze for a moment, then he laughed it off and said perfunctorily, "I can't make the decision on this. This matter must be approved by our sect leader." Yu Qianchou didn't have the time to beat around the bush with him. There was a big mess waiting for the Chamber of Commerce to be established, so he bluntly said, "I don't need you to make the decision. Please send a message to your Chamber of Commerce's sect master. He will tell you what to do." Yu Qianchou didn't have the time to beat around the bush. There was a big mess waiting for the establishment of the merchant association, so he said bluntly, "You don't need to make a decision. Please send a message to the master of your merchant association. He will tell you what to do." Wang Ge couldn't keep his smile. Even Wan Ling wouldn't talk to an elder like him. If it weren't for Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng sitting here, he would have sent them away. The faint smile on Yu Qianchou's face didn't diminish. He stood up and slowly walked in front of Wang Ge. He said word by word, "I don't want to have any conflict with you, but I don't have time to beat around the bush. I advise you to pass on my words to Wan Bushing as soon as possible. He naturally knows what to do. If you delay things, I'm afraid Wan Bushing won't forgive you." Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng looked at each other. They didn't know what was wrong with Yu Qianchou. He actually dared to say such words. However, to their surprise, Yu Qianchou's body actually faintly emanated the aura of a superior. He was like a completely different person compared to before. Insolent. Wang Ge's hair and beard stood on end as he barked, "The name of our merchant association's master is not something you can call out." Yu Qianchou's gaze turned cold. He casually took out the profound purple token and raised it up. "My words have offended you, Elder Wan, please quell your anger. Since Elder Wan is unwilling to help me contact your merchant association's master, then please help me pass my words to Wan Ling. When she gave me this token, she said that I can use this token to look for her if I need anything." Wang Ge suppressed his anger the moment he saw the token. This token represented Wan Gutong's reputation. It couldn't be easily damaged. He snatched the token from Wang Ge's hand, exasperated. "Wait a moment." He turned around and left. Wei Chuanqiu stood up and circled around Yu Qianchou twice. Then he clicked his tongue and said, "Where did you come from? A profound zither token shouldn't be something that someone of your cultivation level can obtain, right?" "How would I know? Someone forcefully gave it to me." Yu Qianchou shrugged innocently. "Don't give me that." Wei Chuanqiu rolled his eyes. "Tell me honestly, who is the Wan Ling who gave you the token? She must be a woman, right?" Yun Peng at the side chimed in. "I heard she's Wan Bushing's precious granddaughter. Wan Bushing dotes on her a lot. She wasn't born before you went into seclusion." Wei Chuanqiu made a long "oh" sound, an ambiguous smile hanging on his face. "Not bad, brat. You actually got together with Wan Bushing's precious granddaughter. Amazing. Admirable. What kind of person do you take me for?" Yu Qianchou snorted disdainfully. Not long after the two of them messed around, Wang Ge hurried in, slightly fearful as he bowed to Yu Qianchou. "I've offended you just now, please forgive me." The sect leader has personally instructed me to do my best to cooperate with you. Before this, he had thought that Yu Qianzhou was someone who relied on Wan Ling to live off a woman. After contacting Wan Ling, he relayed Yu Qianzhou's words to her, and Wan Ling nervously asked him to wait for a moment. What surprised Wang Yi was that not long after, Wan Bushing personally contacted him, warning him in an unusually serious tone. Promise him, try not to provoke him in the future, this person's background is very deep. Wan Bushing only gave him such a short sentence, but Wang Yi immediately sensed something unusual. Wan Gutong was already the #1 chamber of commerce in the immortal world, and from Wan Bushing's mouth, how could it be simple? In addition to Yu Qianzhou's previous words and actions, Wang Yi was a little shocked, faintly suspecting that Yu Qianzhou had some connection with the Immortal Palace. Otherwise, how could Wan Bushing treat him so cautiously? But thinking about it, it didn't seem right. The Chamber of Commerce Alliance was originally controlled by the Immortal Palace. If Yu Qianzhou was from the Immortal Palace, why would he need Wan Gutong's recommendation? No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out the reason, but he knew that this Yu Qianzhou was not someone he could afford to provoke. No wonder that Yu Qianzhou said that if he delayed things, Wan Bushing would not forgive him. Suspicion flashed across Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng's eyes. The change in Wang Yi's attitude was too big. Yu Qianzhou smiled as he received the token from Wang Yi. There's no time to lose, then I'll have to trouble Elder Wan to accompany me to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. I dare not, please. Wang Yi made an inviting gesture. The group of 4 immediately left the Great Hall, flying directly to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, landing outside the Great Hall. Wang Yi walked briskly to the Great Hall entrance, taking out the Wan Gutong Chamber of Commerce Alliance's token for the 2 guards to verify. The 2 guards looked at Yu Qianzhou in surprise, cursing him inwardly for being crazy. Since he could invite Wan Gutong as a referral, why was he still spouting nonsense? The 4 of them were immediately let in. After entering the Great Hall, Wang Yi had the 3 of them wait for a moment, while he himself held the Wan Gutong Chamber of Commerce Alliance's token, heading to the back hall without any obstructions. No one knew what Wang Yi did, but it took some time before he brought 2 golden-robed old men with him. Seeing Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng, the 2 of them cupped their fists in greeting, exchanging a few words of greeting. It was obvious they knew each other. One of them looked at Yu Qianzhou. You're Yu Qianzhou? You want to register a chamber of commerce? That's right. Yu Qianzhou replied in a tone that was neither haughty nor humble. The 2 golden-robed old men exchanged a glance. Then one of them asked with an expressionless face, do you want to register a chamber of commerce that deals in a single business or multiple businesses? Register as a multi-business merchant association, Yu Qianzhou said. The other party answered without hesitation, 50 billion divine grade spirit stones. Yu Qianzhou knew he couldn't be stingy with this amount of money. Even though his heart ached, he still took out the 2 storage bracelets and handed them to the other party. That person counted the items carefully, then nodded to the other person. Not bad. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng exchanged a speechless look. This Yu Qianzhou looked like he only had a broken storage pouch hanging on his waist. They didn't expect him to be so rich. Wang Yi's expression tightened. 50 billion divine grade spirit stones was not something an average soul formation rogue cultivator could take out. This person's background was indeed not simple. Little did Wang Yi know that this amount of money came from their Eternal Trade Association. The other golden-robed old man immediately inquired, the name of the Chamber of Commerce as well as the name of the Chamber of Commerce's president cum sect chief. Yu Qianzhou straightened his back, a sharp light flickered in his eyes as he replied in a sonorous voice, the World Commerce Chamber. Yu Qianzhou. His voice reverberated in the Great Hall. Everyone present could hear the strangeness in his voice, but none of them thought too much about it. This kind of situation was very common. Which person who came to register a chamber of commerce did not have high expectations for the chamber of commerce they registered with. The 2 golden-robed old men each held a jade archive in their hands, and put it away after they were done. One of them announced, the World Commerce Chamber's president cum sect chief, Yu Qianzhou, has completed the registration. The news will be announced to the whole immortal world tomorrow. With that said, the 2 golden-robed old men turned around and returned to the back hall. Wang Yi cupped his fists at Yu Qianzhou, congratulating him. Congratulations, Sect Chief Yu. Congratulations to the World Commerce Chamber for establishing a branch in the immortal world. Yu Qianqiu blanked for a second, then asked suspiciously, "The registration is completed just like that?" Wang Gui smiled. "Yes, the registration is completed. Just like that, they charged me 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones." Yu Qianqiu's face twitched uncontrollably. Wang Gui smiled wryly, thinking to himself, who would dare to reason with the Immortal Palace? He waved his hand, indicating that there was nothing to do here and they could not stay any longer. The group of four exited the Chamber of Commerce Chamber's great hall, walking to the hillside outside. The sun was shining brightly outside. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his face with both hands, but the pained expression on his face could not be erased. Wei Chuanqiu seemed to have regained his senses, staring at Yu Qianqiu with a cold sneer. "Feeling heartache, right? But you're really rich, using 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones to buy the position of sect chief, really extravagant. Hehe. You're the only sect chief in the whole World Commerce Chamber, interesting." Chapter 860. Who says I'm a lone sect leader? Yu Qianqiu looked at Wei Chuanqiu indifferently, his eyes narrowed as he said slowly, "Don't I still have you?" Wei Chuanqiu was rendered speechless. Noticing that Yun Peng and Wang Gui were looking at him suspiciously, Wei Chuanqiu straightened his face. "Yu Qianqiu, don't drag that world commerce of yours into my head. I have no interest in your rundown world commerce that has nothing." Yu Qianqiu tilted his head to avoid the dazzling sunlight. Looking at the streams of light rising and falling in the sky, he slowly said, "Everything starts from nothing. What should have will eventually have. It's time for a lone sect leader like me to recruit some subordinates." As he was speaking, his eyes suddenly narrowed, looking at the buildings on the surrounding hills, asking in astonishment, "Other merchant houses have their own hills here, where is my territory?" Everyone exchanged a glance, then Wang Gui said as if it was a matter of course, "Naturally you have to buy it." "You have to buy it? Didn't you pay 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones just now?" Yu Qianqiu exclaimed in shock. "It's fine if you don't have to spend money," Wei Chuanqiu said with a mocking smile. "There is another method that the World Commerce Alliance allows. If you fancy a house's territory, you can use your name as the World Commerce House's sect leader to issue a challenge to that house's sect leader. According to the World Commerce Alliance's rules, both houses' sect leaders are allowed to challenge each other. As long as you win against the other house's sect leader, the other house has to give up their hill to you, then you don't have to spend a single spirit stone." "But this works?" Yu Qianqiu was rendered speechless for a moment, then asked with a lack of confidence, "How many spirit stones does it cost to buy a hill?" He admitted that he didn't have the ability to challenge other houses' sect leaders, thus he didn't count on saving money. Wei Chuanqiu was the first to answer, decisively raising a finger. 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones. If you're not willing to pay this amount and don't want to challenge other houses' sect leaders, then learn from them." As he spoke, he pointed at the huge plaza surrounded by mountains. There were countless stalls and vendors there. The meaning behind his words was obvious. He wanted Yu Qianqiu to learn from them and set up stalls there. Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. He gritted his teeth and said, "This old man is now the Grand Sect Master of the World Chamber of Commerce. How can I do something like setting up a stall? I think I'll leave this matter to you. I'll prepare the things to sell for you. There's no need for you to worry." Yun Peng and Wang Gui stared at Wei Chuanqiu at the same time. The latter's smile froze on his face. After a long while he said, "What? Why not?" "Because you promised to help me." Yu Qianqiu spoke with an indifferent expression. "If you don't want to set up a stall, I won't force you. Lend me 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones first, I'll repay you later." 10 billion? Wei Chuanqiu was dumbfounded. "I don't see any hope of a lone sect master like you making money. What's the difference between lending you 10 billion spirit stones and throwing it away? I don't even have enough spirit stones for my own use. I can consider giving you 1 or 200 million spirit stones for free. 10 billion is out of the question." Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He had said it casually, but from the other side's words, it seemed like he could really take out 10 billion spirit stones. He coughed lightly. "For an expert like you, taking out 10 or 20 billion spirit stones shouldn't be a problem. As for my ability to repay you, you don't need to worry about it. Think about it, I can take out 50 billion spirit stones to register the World Chamber of Commerce. Do you think I'll be short of your 10 billion? Wei Chuanqiu shook his head like a rattle drum, refusing. "Since you're so rich, why are you thinking about me? I haven't had any income for many years, living off my savings. If you want to borrow money, find someone else. For example, their Wan Gu Tong is very rich. Don't you have a close relationship with them? His finger pointed at Wan Gi. Wan Gi lowered his head and pretended he didn't hear anything, pretending he didn't know anything. This matter has nothing to do with me. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him. He wouldn't do something like reaching out to Wan Gu Tong for money again. As the saying goes, even a rabbit will bite when it's cornered. He couldn't keep trying to take advantage of the other party. If he pushed the other party into a corner, he would be the one in trouble. This kind of stupid thing couldn't be done. Wei Bat King, you promised to help me. Yu Qianqiu emphasized this point once again. Wei Chuanqiu immediately protested. It's true that I promised to help you, but I can't possibly take out my savings to play with you. Look at what you've done. You actually spent 50 billion to buy a lone sect leader, your brain. I'm not going to play along with you, and I can't afford to, because I'm not as extravagant as you. Wan Gi was pondering the relationship between Wei Chuanqiu, Wan Gi, and Yu Qianqiu, whereas Yun Peng was silently observing from the side. He too was pondering what was going on between Wei Chuanqiu and Yu Qianqiu. A person who could casually take out 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones and still dared to pester Wei Chuanqiu endlessly, no one would take him as an ordinary soul formation rogue cultivator. Lend me 10 billion, I'll return you 15 billion a year later. Yu Qianqiu stated nonchalantly. Yun Peng and Wan Gi exchanged a surprised glance. This interest was really high, a little too high. I don't. Wei Chuanqiu's refusal was stuck in his throat. The mustache above his lips curled up, and a hint of melancholy flickered in his eyes as he asked in a doubtful tone, Are you sure you'll return me 15 billion a year later if I lend you 10 billion? This high profit made him feel conflicted. Yu Qianqiu smiled as he untied the storage bag at his waist, handing it over to Wei Chuanqiu. I won't force you. Take a look at the things inside before you decide if you want to lend them to me. Wei Chuanqiu received the storage bag suspiciously, and after a brief inspection his eyes widened in shock as he swiftly took inventory of the things inside. There was a big pile of immortal herbs inside. Each one of them was worth 100 million spirit stones. There were at least 100 billion inside the storage bag. Wei Chuanqiu swallowed with difficulty, raising his head. These? Yu Qianqiu immediately waved his hand, cutting Wei Chuanqiu off, pulling the storage bag back with a smile. It's enough that you've seen it, don't spout nonsense. I only have one question for you, are you going to lend it to me or not? In fact, he could easily take out some of these immortal herbs to exchange for 10 billion spirit stones, but he didn't want to reveal the fact that he had a large amount of immortal herbs in his possession. The reason why he registered the world commerce firm in the immortal world was similar to money laundering. He needed a platform to launder his name. The world commerce firm was doing business normally, so it was normal for it to have immortal herbs for sale. No one could say anything about it. It wasn't that he didn't have any other way besides borrowing money from Wei Chuanqiu, but he needed an expert by his side to protect and escort him. Borrowing 10 billion spirit stones for a year and paying 5 billion spirit stones in interest, it wasn't like he had too much money to spend. The key was to bind his interests with Wei Chuanqiu and pull him onto the pirate ship together. Relying on words and threats wasn't a long-term solution. I'll lend it to you. Wei Chuanqiu agreed in an unusually decisive manner, and quickly took out a storage bracelet. Before handing it over to Yu Qianqiu, he didn't forget to warn him. I'll say the ugly words first. If you dare to lie to me, don't blame me for falling out with you. Yun Peng and Wan Gi looked at each other, not knowing why Wei Chuanqiu's attitude had changed so completely, but it was definitely related to what Yu Qianqiu had shown him. It was also because of this that the items in the storage bracelet were very attractive to the two of them, but looking at Yu Qianqiu's intentions, it seemed like he didn't want a third party to know about it, so the two of them could only suppress their curiosity. My character is the best guarantee. Yu Qianqiu took the storage bracelet and counted it as he praised himself. The number wasn't bad, there wasn't a piece more or less. He wore the storage bracelet on his wrist in satisfaction, his eyes already sweeping across the surrounding mountains as if he was choosing a mountain. However, after a while he frowned. He discovered that all the places he could see were occupied by people. This area of mountains surrounded the square. It should be the most prosperous area. His gaze paused for a moment when it landed on Wan Gu Tong's mountain peak. Then he pointed in a circle and said, Are the sects that occupy this mountain peak all the big sects in the immortal world? That's right, the top-ranked sects in the immortal world are all gathered in this area. The further you go, the weaker the sects become. For example, the world commerce firm that you registered can't even be considered a beginner. I'm afraid it can only be in the outermost area. However, if you become strong enough in the future, you'll have a chance to stand at the front, Wei Xianxia explained seriously. There was no other way. He had already invested a large sum of money, so he naturally hoped that Yu Qianqiu could earn a lot of money as soon as possible, and then return it to him, allowing him to make a fortune as well. Looks like I can only find a mountain to make do with first, and raise the banner of the world commerce firm here. Let's go. Let's go pick a place. Yu Qianqiu called out to Wei Bat King and left, while the other two followed on their own initiative. There was no dense cloud covering the sky inside Hallucination Immortal City. It was clear that this place was also covered by a large array. Although it was difficult to spy on the situation below from high up in the sky, it was different from the protective array that Yu Qianqiu had seen in the human world. This place could be entered and exited at will without any obstacles. The group of 4 flew around the periphery of Hallucination Immortal City. There were many empty mountains at the periphery of the large array, but none of them satisfied Yu Qianqiu. However, places with good mountains and water had already been picked by others. In the end, they had no choice but to pick a high mountain with a waterfall. Once they landed, a golden-robed man immediately appeared and greeted them warmly. His attitude was clearly different from the other people from the Immortal Palace. After Wei Qianqiu's secret introduction, Yu Qianqiu understood that there was actually a golden-robed man squatting on every empty mountain in Hallucination Immortal City. These people were mostly people who didn't have much power in the Immortal Palace, so it seemed like they were exiled here. They could only return after selling the mountain and completing the mission. Otherwise, they would have to keep squatting on the mountain. Therefore, to these people like Yu Qianqiu who picked the mountain was their savior. Since they had already decided to buy it and there was no price to negotiate, Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything. He simply and straightforwardly made a deal with the golden-robed man, buying this high mountain with a waterfall as the territory for the world commerce firm to open. Chapter 861. This mountain couldn't be considered very tall in the hallucinatory Immortal City, but compared to the surrounding mountains, it was still relatively tall. Standing at the top of the mountain, one could clearly see the situation of the surrounding mountains. However, there were very few trees on the entire mountain and not a single tree could be seen. Large chunks of rocks were exposed. Looking around, the barren mountain seemed a little out of the ordinary. The only interesting thing was that there were tens of clear springs and ponds at the top of the mountain. The water converged into one, forming a waterfall on one side of the steep slope. Although the mountain was barren, it was still a bit interesting. Yu Qianqiu looked around with high spirits. Although the territory wasn't big, at least he had his own territory in the immortal world, and he wouldn't be homeless in the immortal world. After building it a little and pulling the people from the mortal world up, this would be everyone's starting point in the immortal world. Why did you choose this mountain? I think that mountain is pretty good. Wei Qianqiu muttered and pointed into the distance. It was a lush and green mountain with towering ancient trees. Not only was it pleasing to the eye, it was also filled with vitality. Yu Qianqiu lowered his head and looked at the 6 to 7 meter diameter pool beside his feet. There was actually a school of small fish swimming around in it. He didn't know how they got to the top of this mountain. He pointed and a fist-sized crystal ball of water floated up from the pool. Inside it was a frightened and uneasy fish that was scurrying around. Bat King Wei, you don't understand. Doing business is all about feng shui. A place with water represents fortune. Especially this running water, it represents an unending stream of fortune. If we occupy this mountain, we will definitely be rolling in money in the future. Do you believe it? Yu Qianqiu said with a smile. The water ball landed in his palm and the small fish inside became more and more anxious. Every time its head bumped against the water ball, it would create a ripple. Unfortunately, it was unable to break through the circular water screen. What does feng shui mean? Wei Qianqiu was stunned. He looked at the other two with a questioning gaze. Yun Peng and Wang Yi also looked at each other, their faces full of doubt. Seemed like they had never heard of this before. Feng shui is the meaning of luck. Those who have feng shui will be able to do everything smoothly. This is a very profound spell and I only know a little about it. Yu Qianqiu casually bluffed. It was really difficult for him to explain anything. The water ball in his hand was thrown back into the pool, and it quietly melted into the water. The small fish scurried around for a while before hiding in the cracks of the rocks at the bottom of the pool, not daring to come out. The three of them looked at each other, feeling a little confused by what they were hearing. Wei Chuanqiu knew that Yu Qianqiu had some incredible tricks up his sleeves. Even though she didn't completely believe him, she still believed him a little. She probed, "Are you saying that as long as we occupy this mountain, we will be able to bring fortune?" "Of course." Yu Qianqiu's eyes flashed and he said indifferently, "But it still needs to be modified by me." After saying that, he leaped into the air and carefully looked at the gushing waterfall, preparing to make good use of it. The few of them didn't know what he was looking at, so they also came to take a look. After looking for a long time, they couldn't see anything. However, they saw that Yu Qianqiu had leaped to the front of the waterfall. He stretched out both of his palms from his sleeves and pressed them against the waterfall, causing the water to splash everywhere. No one knew what he was doing. After a while, the few of them finally saw some clues. They found that Yu Qianqiu was adjusting the mountain behind the waterfall. As the mountain changed, the waterfall that was flowing straight down stirred up large patches of white water. After a while, they saw that the water had stirred up a big Tian character. After making this character, Yu Qianqiu grasped the right amount. The speed at which his palms rose and fell increased, and a down character appeared once again. Not long after, the four huge words World Chamber of Commerce stood erect on the slightly slanted mountain with an awe-inspiring aura. Each word emitted a hua-hua sound of surging water. The different pitches produced by the four words seemed to be announcing to everyone that this was the World Chamber of Commerce. In an instant, the entire mountain became extraordinary. Wei Chuanqiu and the others looked at each other speechlessly. They found that after Yu Qianqiu's actions, this mountain really did have a bit of a treasure land of feng shui. Yu Qianqiu also flew into the air to look at it from all different angles. The corner of his mouth hooked into a smile. It seemed that he quite liked his masterpiece. When the Chamber of Commerce Alliance announced the newly established World Chamber of Commerce, it didn't attract much attention in the immortal world. What really made people remember this Chamber of Commerce was the mountain that the World Chamber of Commerce had transformed. First, some passers-by discovered it by chance. Then it spread from 1 to 10 and from 10 to 100. In the end, everyone knew about it. The four characters World Chamber of Commerce, formed by the water, immediately became a spectacle in the illusory immortal city. Every day many people would come to watch. There were even many people who came from afar after hearing about it. They all marveled at this simple yet extraordinary masterpiece. There was no doubt that no matter how strong this newly established World Chamber of Commerce was, this masterpiece alone was enough to let everyone know that there was such a World Chamber of Commerce in the immortal world. It was a simple idea, but like a stroke of genius, it instantly made the World Chamber of Commerce's name known in the immortal world. Many small chambers of commerce even lamented why they didn't think of this in the first place. This was such a good opportunity to make their own Chamber of Commerce famous. Everyone sighed at themselves for letting go of such a good piece of territory. It should be known that many small chambers of commerce had been operating for many years, but were still unable to make their Chamber of Commerce famous. For example, the tiny Four Links Chamber of Commerce had been operating in the immortal world for many years. It was even the painstaking efforts of several generations of people in the immortal world. Yet when they announced their name, most people in the immortal world didn't know of the existence of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. They didn't even know if they existed, so why would they do business with them? When doing business, the fame of the Chamber of Commerce often represented the amount of profit. There was no doubt about this. Everyone understood this. Look at the World Chamber of Commerce. They didn't even know when they would open for business, but their Chamber of Commerce was already famous. The reason was none other than the contribution of those few characters on the mountain. Those few characters were worth countless years of blood and sweat. It was truly infuriating to compare oneself to others. Some people wanted nothing more than to bang their heads against the wall and die. The mountain was still the same mountain. It just had an owner and a few more characters on the mountain. Other than that, there were no other changes. There weren't even the most basic buildings. It was clear that the World Chamber of Commerce hadn't opened yet. Even so, Wei Chuanqiu had seen the changes in the past few days. They hadn't even started doing business, but their popularity was already booming. Once they opened for business, business would definitely not go wrong. The shifty-eyed Wei Chuanqiu had been wandering around the mountain with his hands behind his back for the past few days. He looked like he was patrolling the mountain. Yu Qianqiu didn't make him do hard labor, but he enjoyed it. He especially liked to wander around the side of the mountain with the characters. It was as if he wanted to tell everyone who came to watch that he was the owner of this mountain. It felt really good to receive the envious gazes of so many people. It seemed like this was the first time he had found this feeling after living for so many years. Although he knew that the owner of this mountain was Xianxia, he felt that he had spent 10 billion to have this popular territory appear. His contribution was definitely not small. It was only right for him to enjoy this bit of glory. He now had no doubts about Xianxia's feng shui treasure land. He had just occupied this territory and it immediately became a treasure land. The feng shui was too good, he would definitely be able to make money in the future. However, the more he thought about it, the more conflicted he became. If business was booming in the immortal world, then he would be able to make a fortune. However, he would only receive 5 billion for the money he spent. Wasn't that too little? Wei Chuanqiu's beady eyes darted around, looking at Yu Qianqiu, who was also looking around the mountain. Yu Qianqiu had been thinking about how to use the current location to build this mountain, especially the dozens of clear springs and ponds. It would be a waste not to use them. Wang Ge had long returned to Wangu Tong. He had his own matters and couldn't always accompany them. Yun Ping, on the other hand, found a place to sit cross-legged on the mountain. He hadn't moved for the past few days, but he was constantly paying attention to Wei Chuanqiu's movements. Based on his understanding of Wei Chuanqiu, Yun Ping could vaguely guess that Wei Chuanqiu was up to no good. Yu Qianqiu, when do you plan to start work on this mountain? Wei Chuanqiu had slipped behind Yu Qianqiu without him noticing, asking with a smile. His concern was obvious on his face. Yu Qianqiu jumped on top of a large rock and looked around the mountain again. His gaze gradually became resolute, as if he had made up his mind. He nodded slowly. I'll find people to start work in the next few days. Hehe. That's good, that's good. Such a good feng shui treasure land is really a waste. Cough cough. That. Wei Chuanqiu's smile suddenly became serious. She said solemnly, it will definitely cost a lot of money to make the whole mountain look good. Have you prepared the money? Yu Qianqiu looked at him in surprise. Since when did Wei Chuanqiu become so concerned about him? He couldn't figure it out. Money is dead, but people are alive. Can a living person be stumped by money? Don't worry. I will think of a way. AI. It's not that I want to scold you, but you're really too much. Didn't I promise to help you? Why do you have to think of other ways to help me? Wei Chuanqiu also jumped on top of the large rock standing beside Yu Qianqiu. He looked around. If we really want to build this mountain to look good, I'm guessing we'll need to spend several 100 million divine-grade spirit stones. If it's not convenient for you, I can lend you some 1 billion more. Is that enough? Yu Qianqiu blanked for a second, looking at Wei Chuanqiu from head to toe with disbelief. It was as if he had heard something out of the Arabian Nights. He couldn't tell if he had heard wrong. Picking his ears, he asked suspiciously, did you just say you want to lend me another billion divine-grade spirit stones? Chapter 862. Wei Chuanqiu waved his hand to stop him. Based on our relationship, you're treating me like an outsider. How about this? Before he finished speaking, he secretly glanced at Yun Ping, who was sitting cross-legged not far away, and then transmitted his voice in a low voice. I estimate that the immortal herbs in your storage bag are worth hundreds of billions. I gave you 10 billion before and now I'll give you another billion. It's almost a tenth of the price of the immortal herbs in your hands. How about this? You don't have to return the money in a hurry. Saving more money to develop the world commerce is the right way. Just let me take 10% of the world commerce's shares. I don't want any more. What do you think? If you agree, I'll give you another billion immediately. Yu Qianqiu leaned back slightly and sized him up. He could tell that this old bat was also a fellow who only cared about money. He coughed and said, it's not appropriate to always take out your own capital. Forget it, I'll think of another way. Don't. Wei Chuanqiu's eyes widened. He stopped transmitting his voice and pretended to be angry. Based on our relationship, there's no point in treating me like an outsider. Damn it. You were so stubborn when I wanted to borrow money from you. Now you're not treating me like an outsider. Yu Qianqiu shook his head. I don't want to treat you like an outsider either. But you can see that my cultivation is shallow. If the world commerce is destroyed one day, you'll lose everything. I really don't want to harm you. Don't worry. Whoever wants to destroy the world commerce's business will have to go through me first. Wei Chuanqiu patted his chest and guaranteed righteously. Then he took out a storage bracelet that he had prepared before coming and stuffed it into Yu Qianqiu's hand. He said solemnly, This is 1 billion. It's settled. Yun Peng, who had been staring at them, shook his head slightly and closed his eyes slowly. Yu Qianzhou looked at the bracelet in his hand and raised his brows. This is not impossible. Old bat, I'll say the ugly words first. No matter how much money you invest without my permission, you are not allowed to interfere with the world commerce's business. If you agree, then it's fine. If you don't, you can take the money back. This. Wei Chuanqiu hesitated for a moment. If he didn't care about anything, wouldn't he have the right to care after spending more than 10 billion? This was not a small amount of money. Don't worry, I won't leave you out once we earn money. Just wait for your share, Yu Qianzhou added. If he didn't want to tie them down with benefits, he wouldn't want any outsiders to participate in World Chamber of Commerce's business. Wei Chuanqiu gritted her teeth and made up her mind. I believe you. It's settled then. Upon hearing this, Yu Qianzhou immediately put away the storage bracelet and laughed. Bat King Wei, you can rest assured. I guarantee that the money you get will be more than enough. Once the World Commerce Association became famous, many people naturally began to pay attention to who the sect master of the World Commerce Association was. On the wide square surrounded by mountains, it wasn't wrong to say that there were too many people and too many mouths. These days, the person who wasted the most of their mouths was the sect master of the World Commerce. Once 3 to 5 people met, they immediately started exchanging pointers. Someone asked the moment they met, "Have you heard? The sect master of the World Commerce Association is that Yu Qianzhou who killed all the disciples of Heartless Palace in the ruins of God." Another person immediately shook his head. That's really strange. How could a mere soul formation stage loose cultivator take out 50 billion to register the World Commerce Association? Someone at the side immediately interrupted. He's not an ordinary soul formation stage expert. It's said that his background is very deep. I personally saw White Cloud Mountain Lord Yun Ping become his mount. Go and take a look. Green Wing Bat King and White Cloud Mountain Lord are following behind him. He has 2 early-stage Immortal Emperor experts as his subordinates. Have you seen a soul formation loose cultivator like this? In just a few days, the news of White Cloud Mountain Lord Yun Ping becoming Yu Qianzhou's mount had also spread like wildfire in the immortal world. For a time, countless people were guessing and investigating Yu Qianzhou's background. This Yu Qianzhou's first appearance was related to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. However, after investigating the Four Links Chamber of Commerce, there was no way to investigate further. There was no other reason than that the current Four Links Chamber of Commerce was no longer something that ordinary people could afford to offend. The Four Links Chamber of Commerce had also become the focus of the entire immortal world. Immortal Palace External Affairs Great Commander Wu Xiong had taken a fancy to the daughter of Four Links Chamber of Commerce's president Mu Bing. After discussion and agreement between both parties, Great Commander Wu Xiong had already sent betrothal gifts. Both parties had set a wedding date for 3 months later. It was said that this marriage was formed because of the love at first sight between the male and female protagonists at the ruins of God Realm. Once this news was announced, the status of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce in the immortal world could no longer be described as rising with the tide. It was more appropriate to describe it as soaring. Countless loose cultivators and loose immortals trampled through the doors of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce, begging to join it. Many sects, big and small, even took the initiative to deliver business to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. Moreover, they were the kind that would rather suffer losses than take the initiative to give up profits. Some even made it clear that they wanted the Four Links Chamber of Commerce to make a fortune. Everyone was well aware of why this was the case. It was nothing more than a show of goodwill towards Wu Xiong, hoping to use this opportunity to improve their relationship. Under these circumstances, who would dare to rashly approach the Four Links Chamber of Commerce to inquire about Yu Qianzhou's information? Even if a few people of considerable status tried to inquire about it, the Four Links Chamber of Commerce would refuse to answer any of their questions. They were unwilling to divulge any information about Yu Qianzhou's origins. In truth, no one in the Four Links Chamber of Commerce knew of Yu Qianzhou's origins. It was only because of a small misunderstanding during a recruitment that they mistakenly recruited Yu Qianzhou. It was also because of this misunderstanding that the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's fate underwent an earth-shattering change. If it wasn't for Yu Qianzhou raising his hand and shouting, the Four Links Chamber of Commerce would not have had the opportunity to organize enough people to go to the Divine Ruin Realm. They would also not have met Wu Xiong, and naturally the Four Links Chamber of Commerce would not exist today. When Yu Qianzhou learned of this news, he was sitting in the inner room of the hallucinatory Immortal City's everlasting Great Hall, chatting with Wan Gi. His main purpose was to ask Wan Gi to help him find people to build his territory. At the same time, he also learned from Wan Gi that Mu Tianjiao and Wu Xiong were going to marry. The two of them fell in love at first sight? Yu Qianzhou was stunned when he heard this. As the main character who had the chance to have an ambiguous relationship with Mu Tianjiao, he really did not see any signs of love at first sight between Wu Xiong and Mu Tianjiao. So no matter how he thought about it, he could not understand how these two people with such a huge disparity in status could get together. Wan Gi, who was sitting next to him, was also stunned when he saw his reaction. Then he suddenly came to a realization. He clapped his hands and laughed, saying, "That's right, I heard that your relationship with eldest Miss Mu is not bad. You even fought side by side in the Divine Ruins realm. I believe your relationship is not shallow. Now that eldest Miss Mu is about to marry Great Commander Wu Xiong, this relationship will definitely be of help to the World Chamber of Commerce in the future." Haha, I actually hope so. Yu Qianzhou smiled politely, but he was a little worried in his stomach. Back then, Mu Tianjiao had abandoned her pride as a woman to confess her love to him, but he had rejected her. He did not know if she would bear a grudge against him. He had always been suspicious of a woman's tolerance in this aspect. If Mu Tianjiao wanted to show him some face and got married to Wu Xiong, then it would be troublesome. I hope that's not the case. Curse those two next door, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong, these two fellows are really useless. They made the first move and didn't even get that girl, causing this daddy here to be on tenterhooks. I'll curse you too when I get the chance. Yu Qianzhou thought to himself. The two of them chatted for a while longer before Yu Qianzhou bid farewell to Wan Gi. Exiting the Everlasting Connection branch's main hall, he left the hallucinatory Immortal City in a low-profile manner and disappeared after finding a more secluded place. The underground world opened up by the Eastern Holy Lands had already become the place where the various feudal lords squatted for a long period of time. Most of them had thrown the family matters to their disciples. After getting their share of the Immortal World's divine-grade spirit stones, the little bit of money in the mortal world was nothing to them. Who had the mood to fight over a few small amounts of money in the mortal world? All of them looked forward to the good days that Yu Qianzhou described to them in the immortal world. As a result, all of them took the initiative to guard the transmission array below the Holy Palace, to prevent it from being destroyed. One must know that this transmission array was the only link to the immortal world in everyone's hearts. They couldn't afford to damage it. Of course, gathering over 300 soul formation experts to guard this transmission array was indeed making a big fuss over a minor issue. In fact, as long as they stayed quiet in the mortal world, no one in the mortal world would be more ridiculous than them. To put it bluntly, everyone was waiting here in anticipation of Yu Qianzhou's return. They didn't want everyone to go to the immortal world and leave them behind. That was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. How many years had it been since someone had ascended to the immortal world? No one wanted to miss it. In the end, Yu Qianzhou didn't fool everyone. He kept his promise and came back. When he appeared in the transmission array he made up, people around him immediately exclaimed, "The torture envoy is back." Those who were leaning against the wall, squatting on the ground, or simply sitting on the ground all stood up. Pairs of eyes that had been waiting for a long time turned to look at him. Immediately, a wave of exclamations sounded. It's true that the torture envoy is back. Torture envoy, you're finally back. Yu Qianzhou almost jumped in fright when he appeared. A large group of people were squeezed in the passageway. It was a dense black mass. No matter how he looked at it, they looked like a group of refugees. Yu Qianzhou looked at them seriously and said, "What's going on? Why are you all hiding in this dark place? Did something happen in the mortal world?" Nongzhu flashed out of the crowd and looked him up and down. She said, "You really have been in the immortal world. When you speak, you don't even use the word cultivation world, but mortal world." As he spoke, he turned around and asked the crowd, "Brothers, this level is a little different from ours." The crowd immediately burst into laughter with a hint of expectation in their laughter. Yu Qianzhou looked at them and thought, well, nothing must have happened. I worried for nothing. Then he waved to the crowd and said, "Everyone be quiet. I have good news for you." Chapter 863. As soon as he said that, the laughter reverberating in the underground space stopped. Everyone held their breaths. revealing a faint expression of excitement and anticipation. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly at the people in the tunnel. I'm currently making preparations in the immortal world. The day we go to the immortal world to conquer the world is not far away. The countdown has already begun. How long more? Nongzhu asked excitedly. Actually, this was what everyone wanted to know as well. Yu Qianqiu smiled but didn't answer. He looked around the crowd and asked, Is Sikongju here yet? As soon as he said that, someone shouted from the back of the crowd. Sikongju immediately teleported in front of him and bowed. Greetings, torture envoy. Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, I've established a merchant association in the illusionary immortal city in the immortal world. It will be the starting point for everyone to establish a foothold in the immortal world. The name of this merchant association is World Merchant Association. Do you understand what I mean? World Chamber of Commerce. Whispers and whispers immediately sounded in the crowd. Sikongju suddenly raised his head. His tightly clenched fists were faintly trembling as he said respectfully, Sikongju doesn't know what torture envoy's intention is. Please enlighten me. Whether you really don't know or not, the reason why I named this merchant association the World Merchant Association is very simple. Firstly, it's to commemorate your master Yin Baikong. But do you know why I want to commemorate Yin Baikong? Yu Qianqiu's gaze slowly swept across the crowd as he said with a solemn expression, I wouldn't know if I didn't make a trip to the immortal world. Cultivators like us, even if we go to the immortal world, we will still be vagrant cultivators with no one to rely on. The immortal world is filled with rich and powerful families. They rely on their strength to bully the weak. They are all ruthless fellows. Even if we go to the immortal world, we will still face many dangers. In the end, whether we can stand firm or not depends on whether we, the cultivators of the mortal world, are united or not. The reason why I named the Merchant Association the World Merchant Association is that I hope everyone can remember that Yin Baikong died fighting against the cultivators of the underworld. The people we will come into contact with in the future will definitely not only be from the immortal world, but also those from the underworld. In short, we, the cultivators of the mortal world, must unite. Once we are divided and our strength is scattered, only death will await us. Everyone instantly sank into silence. In fact, there was no need for Yu Qianqiu to say it. Everyone who had been tempered for a long time understood in their hearts that as long as there were people, there would be grudges. The more people there were, the more it was like this. Bullying the weak and fighting and killing were definitely unavoidable. Whether it was the cultivation world of the human world or the immortal world, it was the survival of the fittest. This kind of thing could only be faced bravely. It was impossible to hide even if one wanted to. Yunantian, who was wearing a white cloak, walked out. He cupped his hands towards Yu Qianqiu and said, You worry too much, torture master. We all know this and we have already discussed it. With our cultivation, even if we reach the immortal world where experts are as common as clouds, we definitely won't be enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. However, we are very confident in the disciplinary master and have already made up our minds to follow the disciplinary master to the end of our lives and conquer a place of our own in the immortal world. No matter what happens in the future, at least for now, none of us will allow a black sheep to appear among us. We will keep an eye on each other. If someone does something wrong to everyone, let alone the disciplinary master, even we won't let him go. It's good that you all understand. Yu Qianqiu looked around at the crowd and nodded. If anyone does something wrong to me and everyone else, I promise to make him suffer a fate worse than death. But then again, everyone here is an overlord in the human world. I have no reason to order you around. When we have enough strength in the immortal world, we will give everyone a chance to establish our own power. As he said this, he casually took out a jade archive and handed it to Yunantian, saying, I don't know much about the immortal world either. Here are some things I know about the immortal world. Take it and make a copy for everyone. Before we go to the immortal world, let's try to get a general understanding of the immortal world so that we don't know anything when the time comes. Also, make arrangements for the human world as soon as possible. I don't want any trouble to befall our headquarters in the human world after we go to the immortal world. All of you better restrain your own people. Don't meddle in the affairs of the human world anymore. Focus on your cultivation. If anyone's subordinates cause any trouble, I will make them pay for it. I won't hold back. Yes, disciplinary master. The crowd saluted in unison. Nongzhu looked at Yu Qianqiu from the side and sighed inwardly. That scum of the cultivation world back then had now become the true controller of the human world and the cultivation world. Moreover, he had begun to extend his influence to the immortal world. Things were indeed different now. Xianxia didn't say much. Everything that needed to be said was written in the Jade Archive. A white mist filled the underground space. When the white mist dissipated, Xianxia was nowhere to be seen. The quiet crowd immediately became restless again. They fought to be the first to copy the Jade Archive from Yunanshan's hands. The construction on the mountaintop of the hallucinatory Immortal City's World Chamber of Commerce was progressing very quickly. The magnificent building on the mountaintop was already taking shape. The contractor for this construction project was the Pavilion of Divine Ordnance, Chamber of Commerce. It was said that the Pavilion of Divine Ordnance had gathered all the skilled craftsmen in the immortal world in the field of construction. No matter how complicated or exquisite a building was, they could build it for you. Moreover, they were known for their perfect quality. They were very famous in the immortal world. Almost all the major sects in the immortal world had hired them to build important buildings. Of course, the cost was much higher than the others. The person in charge of this construction project was a hall master of the Pavilion of Divine Ordnance in the hallucinatory Immortal City. His name was Hisu. For the past few days, whenever Hisu saw Xianxia wandering around the mountaintop, he would get a headache. The main reason was that Xianxia was always trying to come up with creative ideas to add to the designs that had already been finalized. In truth, it would have been fine if Xianxia had said all of his ideas in one go. However, this fellow would always come up with new ideas, giving the Pavilion of Secrets a headache. One day, Xianxia suddenly found Hisu and requested to raise the building's foundation by one floor. He wanted to turn the top floor into a platform. Then he wanted to add an octagonal flying beam roof that was half the size of the platform. The reason for this idea was that Xianxia suddenly thought of creating a place on the top floor where he could bask in the sun during the day and watch the stars at night. Even if it was raining, he could still enjoy the scenery from a high vantage point. Hisu's expression twitched. He had the urge to slap Xianxia twice. The tallest building in the hallucinatory Immortal City was only 6 stories tall. However, Xianxia had forcibly increased the height of a 12-story building to 22 stories. Now he wanted to add another floor. No one in the entire immortal realm had ever seen such a tall building. Putting aside the difficulty of construction, the most important thing was whether this fellow would add a few more layers later on. Sect Master Yu, there's something I have to remind you of. Hisu did his best to maintain his composure. You keep increasing the height and it's a huge test of the building's bearing capacity. If you insist on adding another floor, you'll have to replace all the bearing columns at the bottom. You'll have to use 32 pieces of iron Phoebe that are over 10,000 years old. What's the price of 32 pieces of iron Phoebe? Wei Chuanqiu, who was following behind, interjected nervously. How could he not be nervous? The building that was originally priced at 800 million had been raised to 1,800 million by Xianxia, and the extra money was coming out of his own pocket. It would be strange if he wasn't nervous. Bat King Wei, it's not ordinary iron Phoebe, but 32 pieces of iron Phoebe that are over 10,000 years old. Hisu solemnly reminded Xianxia, then added, each piece of 10,000-year-old iron redwood costs around 10 million divine grade spirit stones, so 32 pieces would cost 320 million divine grade spirit stones. Moreover, this kind of renovation will cost us a great deal of energy, so you must add another 500 million divine grade spirit stones for this renovation. Another 500 million? Wei Chuanqiu's eyes widened in shock. Bat King Wei, take out another 500 million. Xianxia reached out his hand disapprovingly. Wei Chuanqiu staggered several steps back, shaking his head in fear. I won't give you any more spirit stones. Who knows when you'll be done with this again and again. I really don't have much spirit stones left. You've almost squeezed them dry. I really can't afford it anymore. Think of another way. Why should I give up what's near at hand and seek what's far away? Xianxia immediately threw out the words that Wei Chuanqiu had strongly urged him to join them in the past, pulling Wei Chuanqiu back with a beaming smile. If you're worried, how about this? I'll use something as collateral. What do you think? Wei Chuanqiu shook off Xianxia's hand, groaning in pain as he scratched his head like a madman. When he was done venting, he said word by word to Xianxia, Xianxia, I'm warning you, this is definitely the last time, there won't be a next time. With that said, Wei Chuanqiu turned around and threw a storage bracelet to Xianxia. Yu Qianqiu counted and found that the number was not bad. Waving the storage bracelet, he said to Wei Chuanqiu, "Bat King Wei, don't worry, I promise you this is definitely the last time." "Shut up." Wei Chuanqiu's face twitched as he pointed a finger at Yu Qianqiu. "Don't say the word promise to me again, count how many times you've said promise to me." With that, Wei Chuanqiu immediately left, angrily sitting behind Yun Ping in the distance, not looking at them anymore. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He turned around to look at the magnificent building that was still under construction, and for the first time he realized that he really shouldn't continue with the changes. He handed the storage bracelet in his hand to He Su. "This is the last time, just build it according to what I said just now." After counting the spirit stones, He Su didn't say anything else. As long as it was paid, everything else was not something he should be concerned about. He cupped his hands at Yu Qianqiu, then went back to make the arrangements. A month later, a magnificent building that stood at the peak of the mountain with 23 floors and a height of more than 80 meters finally appeared. Apart from the height of the mountain, this building was definitely the tallest building in the Immortal realm. It was different from the other buildings in terms of beauty and grandeur, standing between the heavens and the earth, almost causing the entire Immortal realm to gasp in awe. Chapter 864. The excitement caused by the words, "World Chamber of Commerce," written on the mountain had just subsided when World Chamber of Commerce's grand skyscraper appeared once more, attracting the attention of many in the world of immortals. Some people who had yet to see the waterfall couldn't help but run over to take a look when they heard of the grand skyscraper. Some people who had seen World Chamber of Commerce's waterfall were on their way back. When they heard the news, they immediately cursed the World Chamber of Commerce for being a troublemaker. But cursing was cursing. They turned around and rushed back to World Chamber of Commerce. In the end, the tourist craze this time was even greater than before. For a time, the air around World Chamber of Commerce was bustling with activity. Streams of light gathered from all directions and stopped in the air to watch, all of them marveling at the majesty and grandeur of the building. Little did they know that even He Su and the others from the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets who had built this skyscraper had stopped and stared for a long time before leaving World Chamber of Commerce. They inwardly marveled at its grandeur, wondering if they had really built this building themselves. He Su, who had been tormented by Yu Qianqiu all this time, no longer had a headache. Because he had never had the experience of building such a skyscraper, he had encountered many problems during the construction. Instead, some of Yu Qianqiu's advanced ideas had helped him resolve many of the problems. Sometimes He Su even sighed inwardly. It was a pity that Yu Qianqiu hadn't joined the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets. Otherwise, a master of construction would have risen in the world of immortals. He Su also understood that with the completion of this skyscraper, his position in the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets would rise. His name would also spread throughout the world of immortals through this building. There was no doubt that it would bring great benefits to the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets in the future. At the top floor of the Jade Pavilion, Wei Chuanqiu stood joyfully in front of the white jade railings at the edge. He looked at the world and sighed at the majesty of this building. He felt like he was standing on the shoulders of a giant that had never been surpassed before. It was a wonderful feeling. Previously, he had spent a huge sum of money to build it, and it had caused him great heartache. He had even ignored Yu Qianqiu for a while. Now, under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, he felt that Yu Qianqiu did not do anything wrong. Among the crowd watching from the air, there were people who wanted to personally land on this tall building to experience it. Who knew that before they could even get close, Wei Chuanqiu's gaze was like lightning as he suddenly stared at them. In a low and cold voice he shouted, "The world commerce has not opened yet. If anyone dares to trespass without permission, don't blame me, Wei Chuanqiu, for killing them." Immediately, some of the restless people did not dare to step forward. Everyone could only watch from afar. One must know that there was another person who had always been at odds with Wei Chuanqiu, and that was White Cloud Mountain Master Yun Ping, who was equally as famous as Wei Chuanqiu. For Wei Chuanqiu to say these words without Yu Qianqiu's permission, it was as if he was treating this place as his own home. Yun Ping, who had always been unperturbed, was also slowly walking on the spacious top floor, slowly feeling this world-shocking masterpiece. In the center of the flying beams and painted rafters, there was a dark purple smooth round table with several round stools of the same color. A cool breeze blew gently on top of the tall building. Yu Qianqiu sat there, his 5 fingers rhythmically tapping on the table as he quietly pondered. Perhaps many people felt that there was no need to build such a tall building and that it was unpractical to attract attention. However, for Xianxia it was very necessary. This was because the world commerce was not like other sections. The other sects only occupied a mountain in hallucinatory Immortal City as a branch business. Most of the people were still in the sect, so it was fine as long as there was enough space. However, what Xianxia was considering was to give a decent place for the hundreds of lords in the mortal world. Everyone was coming to the immortal world to follow him in conquering the world. He might not be able to satisfy their other requests, but at the very least he had to satisfy everyone with basic necessities. It would be even better if he could make everyone feel a sense of belonging to the world commerce. He had to accommodate a few hundred people and also had to leave some space for business. Not having enough space was not enough. Therefore, Xianxia would rather spend a huge sum to solve all the problems at once. Otherwise, if everyone lived separately, they would definitely encounter unpredictable trouble or danger. If everyone gathered together, they would have something to rely on. After all, everyone's cultivation wasn't high in the immortal world, and the rules of hallucinatory Immortal City were enough to protect everyone. The registration of the world commerce, the territory, and a place to stay were all settled. The next step was the problem of manpower. Thinking of this, Xianxia slowly stood up and walked out of the flying beams and painted rafters with large strides. There was an uproar in the air. Everyone's gazes were on Xianxia. Words like "he was Xianxia" echoed in the air. Xianxia was already used to it. He walked to Xianxia's side, looked into the distance and said faintly, "Help me send a message in hallucinatory Immortal City." Xianxia was stunned. "Send what message?" "Say that world commerce will start recruiting people in 3 days. It doesn't matter if they're male or female, only ability. For now, we're only recruiting wandering cultivators at soul formation stage. We'll consider those with high cultivation later." Xianxia said faintly, "I want to recruit 300 to 400 people. We'll talk about the pay in person." Recruiting 300 to 400 wandering cultivators at soul formation stage, but he doesn't want those with high cultivation? Xianxia looked at him like he was looking at a monster. Then a mocking smile appeared on his face. He guessed that Xianxia was afraid that his cultivation was too low and that it would be difficult to handle those with high cultivation. If that really happened, then it would be too embarrassing as the sect master of world commerce. Actually, it'll be more convenient to recruit people with high cultivation. Xianxia kindly reminded. Xianxia rolled his eyes and said unhappily, "If I get a bunch of people with higher cultivation than me, then what's the point of me being the sect master?" As soon as he said this, there was a burst of snickering in the air. Xianxia said cheerfully, "All right, we'll do as you say. I'll go run the errands." Then he turned into a stream of light and flew towards the center of hallucinatory Immortal City. This conversation was naturally leaked and quickly spread to everyone in hallucinatory Immortal City. A soul formation sect master leading a group of soul formation stage cultivators. Anyone who heard this would think it was a joke. Everyone felt that such a weak world commerce would be eaten up by others sooner or later. 3 days later, in a hidden valley near hallucinatory Immortal City, more than 300 soul formation stage lords from the human world brazenly appeared. Nongzhu looked left and right and said, "This is the immortal realm?" The others also looked around, wanting to see the difference between the immortal realm and the human world. Xianxia powerlessly waved his hand at everyone and said, "Everyone, you're all people who have been overlords in the past after all. Can't all of you have some poise? Look at all of you. Don't look around like this after entering hallucinatory Immortal City. People can tell with a glance that all of you are foreigners who have just arrived. It's fine if it's 1 or 2 people, but it's hard not to be suspicious when hundreds of people like this appear." The group of people laughed embarrassedly. Xianxia looked around and said in a deep voice, "It's not suitable for me to stay here for long. Just do as I said earlier and there won't be any problems." After that he quickly disappeared. The group of people waited for a while after he left, and then they split into groups of 2 or 3 or groups of more than 10 people. They didn't leave in a single direction, but scattered in all directions one after another. Once they flew out of the valley, they saw a boundless sea of clouds that covered the sky and immediately knew that it was hallucinatory Immortal City. Flowing lights of all colors flew in and out of the boundless sea of clouds at high speed. Everyone was excited to see this. These were the immortals that everyone had been looking forward to for a long time, and they all hurried forward. The sky directly opposite World Chamber of Commerce was already filled with people. They were all here to see the excitement of World Chamber of Commerce's recruitment. Wei Chuanqiu stood at the entrance with his hands behind his back like a door god, while Yun Peng stood quietly at the top of World Chamber of Commerce's building. Yu Qianqiu held a jade archive in his hand and wandered around the entrance. He realized that although there were many people watching, not a single one was willing to sign up. He guessed that everyone thought that World Chamber of Commerce's future was bleak, so no one was willing to join. However, Yu Qianqiu wasn't worried in the slightest, because the people he wanted to recruit had already been decided internally. There was no other way. The unspoken rules were in vogue now. Even if others were willing to join, he wouldn't accept them. After waiting for a while, an early-stage divine transformation cultivator finally braced himself and landed in front of the entrance under the watchful eyes of the crowd. He cupped his fists towards Yu Qianqiu and said, "I am willing to join World Chamber of Commerce and work for you." Yu Qianqiu stopped in his tracks and stood on the steps, smiling condescendingly as he said, "Welcome, welcome. However, there's something I need to tell you in advance. Our World Chamber of Commerce is currently in a tight financial situation, so we might only be able to give out our rewards once a year." "That's right. How much do you expect to receive every year?" "Once a year?" That person was stunned. He had come to this World Chamber of Commerce that not many people thought highly of because he was short on money. If he couldn't even get paid in time, then what would he use for a year? That person was stunned. He gritted his teeth and said, "May I know how much your esteemed World Chamber of Commerce can pay in a year?" "That's not necessarily true." Yu Qianqiu had a solemn expression as he said, "It mainly depends on the Chamber of Commerce's income. If we earn more money, we'll naturally give out more. If we don't earn any money, then we'll owe it for now and give it out when we have money." "But you don't have to look at me like that. I'm a very trustworthy person, so I'm telling the truth and don't want to lie to you." There was a burst of snickering in the surroundings. If anyone was willing to join this kind of Chamber of Commerce, then that would really be strange. With his hands behind his back, Wei Chuanqiu turned his head to the side and rolled his eyes endlessly. It would be a wonder if they could recruit people like this. "It's just that I, your grandfather, have such a hard life." Perhaps that person's brain couldn't wrap around it for a moment. After being stunned for a while, he awkwardly cupped his fists and said, "I'll think about it again." Without waiting for Yu Qianqiu to urge him to stay, he turned and ran, causing Yu Qianqiu to shake his head and sigh. The people hovering in the air roared with laughter. Those who were originally tempted to join the World Chamber of Commerce immediately gave up on the idea after hearing what Yu Qianqiu said. Many people also noticed that a group of soul formation cultivators were flying over from the middle of the mountain. The waterfall flew straight down. A group of soul formation cultivators from the human world couldn't help but hover in the air halfway up the mountain. They all stared unwaveringly at the four giant words, "World Chamber of Commerce," that were surging out of the water. Chapter 865. The misty mist was dreamy and illusory, bringing with it a refreshing feeling. When the soul formation cultivators from the mortal world saw these four large words, they suddenly felt a shock that cleansed their hearts. Under the washing of the waves, the four large words emitted a hua-hua sound as if it was a shocking four-word mantra. Although they already knew that Yu Qianqiu had established the World Commerce Association in the Immortal world, they didn't know that Yu Qianqiu had actually created such a magnificent thing. In the Immortal world, no one understood the meaning of these four words better than them. It was the #1 commerce association established by a peak expert in the mortal world. However, in order to resist the invasion of the outside world, that peak expert would rather die than submit and had already died in battle. The World Commerce Association here was clearly a continuation of the mortal world. Its glory in the immortal world needed everyone to work together to write and carry forward. From the moment they saw these four words, everyone felt a heavy responsibility on their shoulders. This was especially so for Sikongju. When he saw these four huge words, his entire body trembled. Although he forcefully suppressed the excitement in his heart, his eyes could not help but turn red. His mind instantly recalled the black-robed figure under the pine tree. Looking at the surrounding verdant green mountains, only this mountain was completely bare rock. It was so barren, but it seemed incomparably unyielding, standing tall in the immortal world with an extraordinary aura. Stubborn. Tenacious. When everyone raised their heads, they could see the majestic building at the top of the mountain. Was this the World Commerce Association that Yu Qianzhou had single-handedly established in the immortal world? Everyone couldn't help but ask themselves. As soon as they entered illusory Illusion City, they were shocked by the numerous buildings that were connected by a myriad of mountains. All of them knew that every single mountain here represented a power in the immortal dimension. Every streak of light that brushed past them represented a realm that they couldn't surpass, a realm that they had been chasing after in their dreams. An enormous pressure filled their hearts, filling them with a sense of powerlessness. They couldn't help but ask themselves, can we really open up a world that belongs to us here? All of his hesitation disappeared when he saw the words, World Chamber of Commerce. His mind instantly became clear and his courage multiplied. They didn't expect that Yu Qianzhou would be able to single-handedly establish a foundation in this unfamiliar place filled with tens of thousands of sections. The World Commerce Association already had a foothold in the immortal world. None of them were 3-year-olds. They knew that luck alone was not enough. The greater the achievement in front of them, the more effort they had put in behind it. Since the Punishment Master had single-handedly created a new starting point in this world, why should they be overcautious and worried? Everyone looked at each other with determined gazes, and then looked at the majestic skyscraper at the top of the mountain. I didn't expect this kid to be so capable. Old Bai's eyes are indeed extraordinary. Nongzhu glanced at the crowd in the air, and with a flash of her figure she took the lead and swept up to the top of the mountain. A group of ambitious people followed one after another. Yu Qianzhou, who was strolling at the entrance with a jade archive in his hand, frowned slightly when he saw Nongzhu. He had instructed Nongzhu not to come, and to stay in the purple bamboo forest in the southern sea to take care of Furong and the others. At the same time that Nongzhu appeared, whispers broke out in the surroundings. A strange look flashed in the eyes of some of the women. They didn't expect that there would be such a handsome man among the demigod realm cultivators. Why didn't they notice it before? How could they know that this Sir Nongzhu was known as the most handsome man in the world? When Lu Yanqing, who had landed beside Wen Lanfeng, appeared, a trace of amazement flashed in the eyes of the group of men. They didn't expect that there would be such a beautiful and moving woman among the demigod realm women. Why didn't they notice it before? In everyone's eyes, with a group of people taking the lead, dozens of other groups immediately appeared. One by one they landed on the top of the mountain and strode towards the entrance of the tall building. The crowd didn't know if they were imagining things, but each of these demigod realm cultivators had an extraordinary aura. Every single one of them had the aura of a superior being. Although their cultivations weren't much in the eyes of the crowd, when they gathered together, they suddenly gave off a feeling of awe. How could this be? The crowd floating in the air began to look at each other with puzzled expressions. Wei Chuanqiu, who was standing at the entrance of the tall building with his hands behind his back, narrowed his eyes as he looked at the group of demigod realm cultivators striding towards him. He actually felt a faint and threatening aura. How could this be? Nongzhu walked to the bottom of the stairs and put on an act as he cupped his hands towards Yu Qianzhou and said, Loose cultivator Nongzhu is willing to join the World Chamber of Commerce. F***CK, didn't I tell you not to come? What about Furong and the others' safety? Don't worry, I've already convinced that old man Nanming to stay. Besides, if I don't come, others will inevitably have misgivings. The two of them communicated telepathically for a while. Yu Qianzhou squeezed out a smile and said, Welcome, welcome. However, there's something I need to tell you in advance. Our World Chamber of Commerce is currently in a tight financial situation, so we might only give out rewards once a year. Alright, how much do you expect to get every year? It was exactly the same as what he said to that demigod realm loose cultivator. Nongzhu's face revealed an elegant and faint smile, causing the hearts of the women in the air to ripple. He said calmly, I'm willing to join the World Chamber of Commerce not for the rewards, but because I like the potential of the World Chamber of Commerce. I hope to grow and develop together with the World Chamber of Commerce. Why did it feel like he heard this a lot in his previous life? The expression on Yu Qianzhou's face twitched. With an ugly smile he turned sideways and made way for them. He waved his hand in invitation and said, The World Chamber of Commerce welcomes you to join us. Please come in. Nongzhu strode into the building with some curiosity. The jade archive in Yu Qianzhou's hand flashed with white light. Then Hu Changshou and Li Duxing bowed together and said, Hu Changshou and Li Duxing are willing to join the World Chamber of Commerce and work for you. Yu Qianzhou was about to reply with a smile, But Li Duxing blocked him with one arm and said coldly, "Head you, if you want to talk about the rewards then don't say it. I'm not here for the money. Like Mr. Nongzhu, I'm interested in the development potential of the World Chamber of Commerce." Hu Changshou said with a smile. Yu Qianchou was stunned. Then he turned sideways to make way for them and said, "In that case please come in." As soon as the two entered, a dozen people led by Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing stepped forward and bowed together, saying, "We're willing to join the World Chamber of Commerce and work for you." As soon as they finished speaking, a large group of people rushed in from behind and shouted in a chaotic manner, "We're willing to join the World Chamber of Commerce and work for you." The group of people floating in the air was a little dumbfounded. They didn't know where these people came from. Under such harsh conditions there were still people rushing to join. It was really strange. Yu Qianchou's face turned slightly dark. What was wrong with these people? Weren't they afraid of being suspected by doing this together? So he waved his hand and shouted with a calm face, "Everyone think carefully. It's better not to join in the fun. Although the World Chamber of Commerce is a newly established chamber of commerce, it's not a place to idle around." Yunnan Tian, dressed in a white robe, squeezed out and cupped his hands saying, "I don't know about others, but if I wanted to idle around I wouldn't come here to be restricted. Had you, being able to establish a chamber of commerce with the cultivation of the spirit-severing stage is very admirable. It can be said that you've fought for the pride of us individual cultivators of the spirit-severing stage. Just based on this, I'm willing to serve the World Chamber of Commerce." Then he secretly transmitted his voice, "Torture envoy, don't worry. Spirit-severing stage cultivators like us are nothing in the eyes of the immortal realm. So what if they suspect us? Could it be that there are people who can find out about our origins? As long as we don't say anything no one will be able to find out. If someone wants to say anything it'll be fake even if we pretend." "Damn it. You guys really thought it through." Yu Qianchou grinned speechlessly. Another person in the crowd raised his arm and shouted, "I'm also here for the World Chamber of Commerce. Other than the World Chamber of Commerce, I'm not going anywhere." With this shout the crowd's emotions immediately surged. One by one they raised their clenched fists and strongly requested to join the World Chamber of Commerce. It was as if they wouldn't join the World Chamber of Commerce. The atmosphere at the scene was a little chaotic and the shouts were a mess. The people floating in the air to watch the show all revealed mocking smiles. Someone tilted his head and whispered to the people beside him, "This is very strange. Needless to say it must be someone deliberately sent by some family to cause trouble." The people beside him giggled and replied, "Indeed. Although these people's cultivations aren't much, their auras are extraordinary. One look and you can tell that they aren't rogue cultivators. They're clearly here to cause trouble. They might even be sent by the heartless palace that he offended before. This time it'll be enough for Yu Qianchou to suffer." He's asking for it. A mere soul formation cultivator actually dares to establish his own sect. It'd be strange if no one comes looking for trouble. On the top floor, Yun Peng had already landed on the jade railing at the edge. He lowered his head and stared down with a pair of sharp eyes suffused with killing intent. Below, Wei Chuanqiu's gaze swept across the crowd like cold lightning. He opened his mouth and shouted like a bolt from the blue, "Where did these little bastards come from? You know I'm here yet you still dare to cause trouble. Do you really think that I, Green Wing Bat King, is easy to bully?" Apart from Yu Qianchou who knew the truth, everyone else clearly thought that this group of people from the human world were here to cause trouble. "All of you shut up," Yu Qianchou shouted from the doorway. He was indeed a little angry. These people were simply disorganized and undisciplined. The group of people also looked at him and no longer jeered. Yu Qianchou tossed the jade archive in his hand to Wen Lanfeng and said, "Fill in your name and go in." Wen Lanfeng quickly wrote his name on the archive, then passed it to Lu Yanqing. Just like that, the jade archives were passed down one by one, and the crowd entered the building one by one. Wei Chuanqiu, who was standing guard at the side, was starting to panic. He teleported to Yu Qianchou's side and warned, "These people are obviously here to cause trouble. Don't provoke them." Yu Qianchou didn't know how to explain it to him. He stared at the back of the crowd and saw a few strangers sneaking into the crowd. Judging from their sneaky expressions, it was as if they were trying to fish in troubled waters. Yu Qianchou narrowed his eyes and transmitted his voice to the people behind him, "Damn it. Do they really think this place is some kind of market where everyone wants to come in and take a look? Listen up, everyone. Don't be afraid of trouble. We have experts here to protect us. Slaughter those people who are trying to fish in troubled waters. Consider it a good start. Chapter 866. As soon as he said this, many people were delighted. Xianxia was Xianxia after all. Even after becoming the demonic ghost region's torturer, he was still the same. There was nothing he didn't dare to do even in the immortal realm. However, since the torturer had spoken, then everyone had to do it. There was nothing much to say. Zhou Xian tilted her head and glanced at the person who had just interrupted her. She turned around and glared at him angrily. That person was startled but immediately nodded and smiled in a friendly manner. However, to his surprise, Zhou Xian didn't say a word. Instead, she waved her hand and slapped him across the face. She shouted sternly, "How dare you touch this old lady's butt?" That person was about to lose his temper after being slapped, but when he heard this, he hurriedly waved his hand and said, "You've misunderstood. I didn't touch it." Someone next to him immediately sneered and said, "Damn it. If it wasn't you, then were we the ones who did it?" Then someone else said, "I'm ashamed to be associated with such scum. F***ck him." Before he could finish his sentence, a bunch of fists and kicks swarmed him. The wronged person was instantly buried by the crowd as he screamed in pain. This chaos immediately caused an even bigger commotion. Someone here shouted, "How dare you steal my stuff?" Someone there immediately shouted, "Why did you knock into me?" The scene of fighting and killing immediately became a mess, mixed with shrill cries of pain. A bloody person rushed up and immediately a dozen or so flying swords flew out to kill him, creating a rain of blood. A few pieces of the fallen corpse were swatted away by someone's palm. The chaos of fighting and killing ended in a short while. A few mutilated corpses were kicked out of the crowd. The group of demonic transformation cultivators acted as if nothing had happened and slowly walked forward with the group. One by one they wrote their names on the jade archives, then entered the building. However, the bloody footprints that led straight to the World Commerce Guild's building were exceptionally glaring. There were also a few corpses that were so badly mutilated that they didn't even look human. The commotion below caused the group of onlookers to be dumbstruck. This recruitment scene was truly lively. This group of soul formation stage fellows were truly bold. They actually dared to make a move in the illusory immortal city. Some of the people in the sky had gloomy expressions. They had personally witnessed their own disciples being beaten to death, so it would be strange if they were in a good mood. These disciples who were killed were spies that some sects wanted to plant in the World Commerce Chamber of Commerce. Who knew that they would be eliminated before they could even begin. What depressed some people the most was that they could only watch as their disciples were beaten to death, but they couldn't do anything to stop it. Otherwise, anyone with a discerning eye would be able to tell that it was someone sent by their sect. He had never seen such a group of people who didn't follow the rules. They didn't have any scruples at all and just made a move. Just like that, several hundred people entered the World Commerce Chamber's building. Xianxia watched everything that had just happened, dumbstruck. From time to time he would turn his head to look at the people walking around laughing and joking in the lobby. This group of soul formation stage wandering cultivators really had guts. When did soul formation stage cultivators have more guts than me? He swallowed his saliva and asked Xianxia with difficulty, "Xianxia, are you sure you want to recruit this group of people?" Unexpectedly, Xianxia looked at him with a gloomy expression and said in a low voice, "Bat King Wei, please make a trip to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance to make a report. Just say that some sects are suspected of deliberately sending people to cause trouble during our World Commerce Chamber's recruitment. A few people have been killed here. You must ask the Chamber of Commerce Alliance to investigate the mastermind behind the scenes and give justice to our World Commerce Chamber." Make a report? Xianxia was startled. He felt that the words "make a report" sounded familiar. After hesitating for a while, he saw Xianxia's face surge with anger. "If you're not going, then I'll go." "Alright, I'll go. Xianxia's body turned into a stream of light and flew away. Who asked him to invest so much money into the World Commerce Chamber? He was still waiting for this sect master Yu to give him more money. The group of onlookers in the air nodded thoughtfully when they heard this. Indeed, Xianxia thought the same as them. They also suspected that someone had deliberately come to cause trouble. However, they were more suspicious of those people who had entered the World Commerce Chamber's building. Those people were more likely to be here to cause trouble. Many people even thought that perhaps Yu Qianzhou wanted to deliberately calm the people inside and then invite the Chamber of Commerce Alliance to wipe them out. At this moment, Yu Qianzhou also cupped his hands towards the group of people in the air and said in a clear voice, "I'm really sorry to have let everyone see this joke. It was not my wish for this to happen. From now on, the World Commerce Chamber will temporarily stop recruitment until the Chamber of Commerce Alliance has investigated this matter." Not long after, Wei Chuanqiu brought 2 golden-robed men. As soon as the 2 men arrived, some people in the crowd began to quietly leave. With someone taking the lead, the others thought about it and did not want to cause trouble, so they also silently dispersed in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the crowd of onlookers was completely gone. The 2 golden-robed men turned the corpses over and examined them several times. They found that the corpses were already badly mutilated and their original faces could not be seen clearly. The strangest thing was that they could not even find a storage bracelet or storage bag on their bodies. If there were, perhaps they could find some clues from inside. Yu Qianzhou, who accompanied the examination, also felt that it was a little strange at this moment. Even if they were itinerant cultivators, they should not be unable to even hang a storage bag, right? He then looked back at the people wandering in the building with some doubts. In fact, his suspicions were not wrong. The things on the bodies of these dead people had been taken advantage of by some people inside. They had gotten a taste of robbing things in the Divine Ruin realm and could not help but steal it. After the 2 golden-robed men finished their examination, they looked at each other and shook their heads slightly. Clearly they did not find anything. One of them turned around and asked, "Sect Master Yu, what evidence do you have to prove that these people were deliberately sent by some sect to cause trouble?" "It's very simple. I don't have any enemies in the immortal world. And look at them." Yu Qianzhou pointed to the corpses and said, "They don't even have a storage bag on them. It's fine if it's just one, but all of them are like this. It's clearly a premeditated move. This is the best evidence." Wei Chuanqiu, who was at the side, rubbed his chin in doubt. He seemed to have seen these people mix into the crowd with storage bags on their bodies. Why were they gone? The golden-robed man sneered in his heart. "The matter of you killing the disciples of Heartless Palace in the Divine Ruin realm is already known to the world, and you still say you don't have any enemies?" He then frowned and said, "Then who killed them?" "They killed each other. Many people can prove it." Yu Qianzhou looked around and saw that there was no one around. He said in a daze, "The onlookers just now all saw it with their own eyes." The golden-robed man's gaze followed the bloody footprints and extended to the crowd in the building. He snorted coldly and said, "What a coincidence. All of them killed each other. Sect leader Yu, you've seen what happened. We also believe that these people were sent by some sects to cause trouble, but we can't find any evidence at all. We can't just point fingers at any sect. I reckon that we won't be able to find anything even if we work ourselves to death. I think we should just let this matter go. It's not a big deal anyway. Sect Master Yu, what do you think?" The meaning in his words was very clear. They did not want to make a big fuss over a few insignificant people. They asked Yu Qianzhou to stop here. The reason why Yu Qianzhou complained first was because he wanted to avoid trouble first. He did not want his World Commerce Chamber to cause trouble. It did not matter to him whether they pursued the matter or not. However, he still took out 2 storage bracelets and stuffed them into the golden-robed man's hands. He said with a serious face, "I believe the Commerce Chamber Alliance's decision is the most fair." The golden-robed man checked the items in the storage bracelets. He found that there were 10,000 divine-grade spirit stones in each bracelet. There was nothing else. He was stunned for a moment before he realized that it was a reward from the golden-robed man. He nodded and said, "It's good that Sect Master Yu knows this. We will take these 2 pieces of evidence back and check them carefully. I'll have to trouble Sect Master Yu to deal with these corpses yourself. My name is Kong Hua and he is Chao Xingyang. If you have any problems in the future, feel free to look for us. Hey, take care." Yu Qianzhou cupped his fists and sent them off. The 2 golden-robed men cupped their fists politely and turned into 2 streaks of light as they flew away. After watching the 2 leave, Wei Chuanqiu came over and asked suspiciously, "What kind of evidence is inside those 2 storage bracelets?" Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes as if saying, "You don't even know this?" He casually flicked a few sparks, burning the corpses into ashes. The 2 of them then walked into the main hall, looking at the several hundred people gathered in the hall. These several hundred people were also looking at Yu Qianqiu with passion. If they weren't worried about whether Wei Chuanqiu was a friend or a foe, they would have come over to express their excitement. Wei Chuanqiu frowned as she looked at this group of people. Wei Chuanqiu, on the other hand, frowned as he looked at this group of people. In his heart, he still felt a little unhappy that Yu Qianqiu had rashly accepted this group of people. However, he had promised Yu Qianqiu that he would not interfere in any matters of the world commerce. Everyone, since you have joined my world commerce chamber, we are one family from now on. I don't ask much of everyone, I only hope that everyone can work together to run the world commerce chamber well. Yu Qianqiu pointed at Wei Chuanqiu and said, "Let me introduce to everyone, this is an early-stage Immortal Emperor expert, Green Wing Bat King Wei Chuanqiu. He is one of the members of our World Commerce Chamber. There is also a white-robed guest upstairs, also an early-stage Immortal Emperor expert. He is White Cloud Mountain Lord Yunping, who is equally famous as Bat King Wei. Early-stage Immortal Emperor expert." Everyone was shocked, but they were all smart people. Hearing Yu Qianqiu's polite introduction, they immediately understood that they had to have a reserved attitude towards Bat King Wei. There were some secrets that couldn't be revealed. They immediately bowed and said, "Greetings, Bat King Wei." Wei Chuanqiu waved her hand indifferently and didn't say anything. Clearly, she wasn't very interested in everyone. Yu Qianqiu smiled and pointed upstairs. "The first to fifth floors of this building are for business. The sixth floor is all guest rooms used to receive guests. Starting from the sixth floor, each floor has 25 sets of single rooms. There are 307 people here. From the 7th floor to the 20th floor, there are a total of 14 floors. There are a total of